Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei and others lost the war with Rizevim Lucifer and went back in time part 4. Before we start, please go support RichTales for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Chapter 11. Fight for freedom. Somewhere further away from the underworld, where the sky is of a wide combination of colors and bathed in countless stars, a kind of floating coliseum with pillars that were shaped like different chess pieces had appeared. In order to be the scene of a fierce fight agreed upon between two beings of great power. The demons who attended the commitment ceremony between the Gremory and Phoenix clans remained in the Great Hall, watching the entire combat space through a magical projection. Shortly after, two flashes of light appeared at each end of the place. On one side, there were most of the members of the entourage of the high-class demon, Razor Phoenix, who were waiting patiently next to their master, who had two of his pawns very close to him. They were both blushing. And saying incoherent things is almost certain to think about what the blonde does with them to fight boredom. In the other half of the arena, a masked man adjusted his gloves, carefully watching the actions of the Phoenix heir through his enhanced vision, and noticed two details. One of his servants was missing and she is not taking this seriously. Hey, the Sekiryuutei shouted to get the fried chicken's attention. Not even he turned to look at him since he is busy discreetly groping one of his slaves' breasts. Where is the brat? Did you dare to call me a brat again? From the sky appeared the projected image of the one mentioned by the young man. But he had a frown on his face, and faint flames sprang from his pigtails. For your information, my name is Rizevim Phoenix, fourth daughter of the Phoenix clan. She's not going to fight. She asked to remain a spectator, Razor says using a rather confident tone, now separating from his pawns and walking to follow his monologue, and her participation will not be necessary. Okay, but let it be clear that I gave you the lead, the stranger said, opening and closing his hand. Then he put himself on guard. It won't take me long to finish this. Do you think you will defeat Oni-sama and the others so quickly? Asked an incredulous Ravel. The Welsh dragon ignored the blonde's questioning. Then I'll make them shut you up before you can do anything, the Phoenix heir boasted, going to his queen to do the same thing as the previous ones. At that, another projection appears, showing the Crimson Satan. The only rule is that killing is prohibited. The winner will be the one who knocks out the enemy or enemies, or if one surrenders. Without anything else to say, begins Serziches concluded, thus beginning the confrontation. I will show the upper class of the underworld how pathetic you are, and when I win, the first thing I will do is rip off that mask as proof and trophy that I, Razor Phoenix, defeated the Sekiryuutei. Well, what are you waiting for? Show me the best you have. Look, Nell. Take care of that guy. Razor was the first to give orders to his entourage, passing his hands over the purple-haired girl's body. Hurry up, I have a wedding to attend. Yeah, send your weakest pieces first. Commented the hooded man, watching as the three girls ran towards him with their BM and electric saws respectively. You're not the best strategist, are you? You will pay for interrupting Razor Sama's marriage, the trio of pawns exclaimed at the same time, and then shouted something halfway to increase their attributes. And opportunities promotion. Queen. I see, they will go with everything from the beginning. Let's see what they are capable of. Being millimeters away, the twins made a great jump with their saws, with the intention of cutting off the boy's arms, while the brunette plans to pounce and use the tip of her cane to deliver an accurate blow to the stomach. Her plan, it would have worked if it were an amateur, but we are talking about an experienced Red Emperor dragon. He ran towards them, and the moment Mira launched herself forward, her masked man used her as a boost, making her lose her balance, while in the air, he grabbed the two green-haired girls by the neck. The boy barely landed, he slammed the pair of pawns against a hard stone floor with such force that he left two small craters and made the sisters spit out a lot of blood. Mira stood up as quickly as she could to try something else. The only thing she could think of was to try to land a baton on her opponent's face. To his bad luck, the Sekiryuutei was faster and saw how the BM was going to his face, so in an agile movement, he took the weapon from the girl and hit her in the stomach with it, knocking the air out of her combined with some blood. As if that were not enough, the impact caused it to end up crashing into one of the farthest pillars of the arena. None of them showed any signs of getting up again. Razor and the others were scared by what they saw. The mysterious guy took down three pawns in a few seconds, and he hadn't even used his sacred gear. Then they remembered that they still have the numerical advantage and they missed it. I admit that was unexpected, but that doesn't mean you'll win, the blonde confessed, stopping touching his queen. Well, the stranger, with the cane still in his hand, destroys it like a breadstick. Apparently, you didn't learn anything. The Welsh dragon's tired way of speaking only irritated the Phoenix heir more. He treats him as if he were a rookie. Boosted gear. Growl Marion, Burant, Sharia. Go. The maid named Marion shouted, followed by the others. Promotion. Night. Being close to the young man, they began to move quickly around him. The three women had improved his speed in order to mislead him and attack him at the slightest opportunity. They were gradually closing the distance with the boy until they were just a few meters apart. Instead, he just crossed his arms again. Unlike the previous ones, we will be more cautious, the exotic dancer named Sharia boasted, hoping that her words would have some effect on her enemy. But she had not even moved from her place. That. You give up. Boost. We knew you couldn't, since we are superior. NGHH. Burant and the others continued to boast about his brilliant plan. But suddenly they felt a sharp pain throughout their body. So much so that they fell to the ground. Almost unconscious. Bastard, what the hell did you do? Fury was gradually dominating the Phoenix air after not being able to visualize what happened. In the Great Hall, many were dumbfounded by the recent events, since none of them could know what the stranger did to make more pieces fall in just a few moments. Only the most experienced could barely observe the actions of the Red Emperor Dragon. I couldn't see it, what happened? Said a dismayed Kiba. For a knight like him, who specializes in speed, to not be able to see the movement of the masked man, it is easy to feel afraid for the bearer of the boosted gear of this generation. While Razor Sama's servants provoked Sekiryuutei Sama, he took the opportunity to repeatedly attack them in the weakest points of the body. Grafia was one of the minority capable of half keeping up with the Welsh dragon and explained to those nearby what that had passed without changing his serious tone. His blows were faster than the speed at which the nerves sent pain signals to the brain, which is why they took a while to react. Impressive. Lucifer mentions in amazement, watching the magical screen. This shows how the mysterious boy was walking forward, leaving behind the 3 women who were on the verge of fainting. Then he only thought the following. What else are you capable of, boy? Back in the arena, the remaining pieces felt cornered. Not even 5 minutes had passed and 6 of his teammates were already defeats. For the Phoenix Air, this was humiliating in many ways. I'm starting to regret my decision. It's pathetic to see how you send your pawns as if they were cannon fodder. The hooded man's harsh statement further increased Razor's anger. But what he said next was the last straw. He spilled the glass. I'll ask you this only once. Will you start taking this seriously yet? Damn. Razor finally burst out, summoned his wings of fire and flew upwards, so the stranger resumes a combat pose again, waiting for his opponent's next move. I will reduce you to ashes myself. Suddenly, the blonde phoenix began to create a sphere of fire that grew larger and larger, to the point that it looked like a gigantic burning wrecking ball. When he finished creating it, he threw it in the direction of the Red Emperor Dragon. The bad thing was that it was not as fast as a conventional fireball. If things are going to be like this, I suppose I must also go to the next level. No one, not even Serziches, understood what the young man meant by those words. Hasn't he given everything yet? Well, we'll see about it in a moment. The boy extended his left hand horizontally and said 2 words that ended up defining the future result of this meeting. Balance breaker. Just after finishing saying that, the crimson gauntlet began to radiate an intense scarlet light that enveloped the masked man part by part. When the glow ceased, parts of a majestic red armor materialized, covering every centimeter of the stranger's body. From his legs to his neck, leaving only his mask exposed. This is the power of the Sekiryuutei. Finally, in the section of his face, an immense helmet of the same color as his mask, with golden spikes below the helmet's piercing emerald green eyes, appeared to finish the armor in its entirety. What was beautiful was also impressive. Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker Boost. It didn't take long for the reactions to appear among the spectators, many of whom were astonished. There were comments from demons overwhelmed by the ability of the current wearer of the boosted gear. Others even dropped their glasses because they felt the aura that the boy emanated. Not even the most serious ones were saved from a shiver running through their body. Balance Breaker. A forbidden move. Riaz was part of those who did not hide the surprise from her, just like her childhood friend and servants. Except one who opened her eyes much wider after seeing that armor again. Asia-chan, are you okay? The Gremory Queen approached her cowhide and noticed that she was sweating a lot and her legs were shaking. At that, the former nun suddenly fell to the ground, worrying her classmates. What's wrong? You feel bad? The bishop could barely speak clearly and it seemed like she would have a panic attack at any moment. Luckily Akeno knelt down to help her calm down, making her take a deep breath. Seconds later, the blonde was already beginning to relax. Gee, thank you, Akeno-san. Are you feeling better? The black-haired woman chose to make sure that Asia was no longer upset and she nodded in response. They even summoned her familiar Rasei to caress him and thus avoid another panic attack. Okay, now tell us. What's going on? He went to the church for me, the ex-nun stammered, pointing to the silhouette of the hooded man. With this revelation, the group of young demons no longer knew what to think about. I saw it SS only. For a few seconds, but it's him. I'm totally sure it's He. Many questions flooded their minds. But there was one in common. What had they done to awaken the Sekiryutei's interest in them? Back at the floating coliseum, Razor looked angrily at his opponent's transformation. He knew that he made the mistake of underestimating him. Knowing that his attack might now have no effect, he created smaller fireballs to speed up the advance of the larger one. The Welsh dragon saw what the blonde was trying and decided to prepare his counterattack. He raised his left hand in the direction of the flaming sphere, as if he were pointing it at him, then a red orb emerged from his palm, being 7 times smaller than the Phoenix Heir's flare. "Do you really think that something as insignificant as that little ball will do anything to me?" Although the fried chicken sounded confident on the outside, on the inside he was doubting his own words. "I don't think. I know it will work," the stranger said confidently. When the fireball was a few centimeters away from him, he only moved his arm back before shouting, "Dragon shot." At that moment, the boy hit the orb and shot out at high speed, passing through the immense fiery attack as if nothing had happened. It resisted Razor's every attempt to destroy it. The little ball was getting closer and closer to him, and he could only squeeze his eyes waiting for the impact and… nothing. The only thing he remembers was feeling something or someone push him aside and combined with it a roar very close to him. He didn't know what happened until a few seconds later. In reality, there were 2 who pushed the blonde, being the Nekomata sisters Nai and Lee, both pawns. Apparently, they sacrificed themselves to prevent their king from suffering enormous damage. From the dark cloud generated by the explosion, 2 female figures plummeted until they crashed on the floor near the leftover pieces. Their bodies were giving off smoke, and they had burns everywhere. Some didn't believe they were still breathing. "You." Razor murmured as he saw his pawn writhing on the ground, but loud enough for the sisters to hear. "Our Razor-sama. F for you, we would do whatever," the red-haired Nekomata said very weakly, doing her best not to lose consciousness, but it was inevitable for her and her twin. The act of those 2 was very noble, even the Red Emperor Dragon praised the actions of the demons. And then bothered the Phoenix Heir again, "Too bad it was for someone like you. They only hinder me." Despite being shocked by the actions of his slave, the blonde maintained his arrogant and ungrateful way of being. "If they hadn't gotten in the way, I would have stopped your shot." Growl. "How much longer will you continue to deceive yourself like that?" Getting tired of every word his opponent said, the boy continued walking at a slow pace. "I'm getting fed up with your attitude." Razor was about to attack the young man again, but this time he understood that he wanted to incite him to that. Take advantage of the fact that he was blinded by anger and defeat him in that state of frenzy, so he took a deep breath before speaking. "I won't let your words irritate me anymore," boasted the Phoenix Heir, retreating back. But not before saying something else to his remaining servants, all of them, to him. "And bring me his mask." Good. The remaining pieces obeyed. Although the uncertainty of facing the mysterious guy head-on remained. At this moment, there were 1 bishop, 2 knights, 2 rooks and the queen left on Razor's side. And the enemy to defeat was the wearer of the boosted gear with balance breaker included. Even if the chances of defeating a celestial dragon are also 0. Each one took a strategic position in which they could make the most of their capabilities and have a chance to defeat their opponent. "At least you no longer send them to fight in groups of 3, said the stranger, examining his surroundings. Rooks and knights were positioned in front, behind and on the sides, while the queen and bishop chose to levitate to have a broader point of view. After a few moments of remaining still, the Sekiryuutei knew that it was time to continue with the show and prepared whenever they want. These words were enough for the 3rd fight of the night to begin. The first to advance was a woman wearing a navy blue kipao with gold details and a traditional Chinese hairstyle, who had channeled fire into her limbs in order to do more damage. Her name is Shulin, and she has the abilities of a tower. In addition, she is accompanied by another girl who wears complete silver armor with black touches and a white headband that crosses her hair and forehead, moving at high speed and carrying her sword imbued with fire with the purpose of piercing her opponent. Carloman, the female knight, will face the enemy to defend the honor of her master. The masked man also went towards them, and an exchange of blows began to echo throughout the arena. The tower launched its best punches and kicks, powered by the fire of the immortal bird, while the horse strove to give powerful cuts and slashes, with its sword also bathed in the flames of the phoenix. The Red Emperor Dragon also attacked when it had chance, while dodging a few moves from his opponents. By this point, Riaz and company weren't even blinking. They didn't want to leave out a single detail of the fight that was happening right now. After a while, Sekiryuutei, but he was not far behind and used his left forearm to cover himself by the hair. Then he discovered that his guard was down, something that the Phoenix Tower put in his favor by landing almost all of its blows on the hooded man's armor. "We will not let you defeat us," Sekiryuutei exclaimed the Chinese-looking woman, continuing her attack on the boy's torso. "You committed the atrocity of humiliating Razor-sama. That is something we will not forgive," the Phoenix swordswoman assured, keeping her adversary's forearm busy. "This is getting more entertaining by the second," the Welsh dragon said relaxedly, using her free hand to deflect some of Shulin's punches. Being so calm irritated her even more. "DSK. Isabella, Cirrus, it's your turn, the angry tower shouted, increasing its strength with each blow. Responding to the call of the Kipao girl, a woman ran towards the Sekiryuutei. He had short light brown hair with reddish highlights. He wears a black jacket and matching jeans, with a cut section of these on his right leg, as well as some fighting gloves and a white mask that only covered half of his face. When she was within reach, Isabella landed a well-aimed hook on the mystery guy's lower back. As if that were not enough, another young woman with long blue-black hair appeared in the air. Her clothing consisted of a white and black top, red shorts and brandishing a zweihander, a type of greatsword that is designed to be used with both hands. Due to her weight. Like the previous ones, she pointed her gun at the boy's right arm. That mask you're wearing isn't bad, the brunette confessed, giving more slow but strong punches to the stranger's back. Maybe I'll keep it if Fraser-sama allows me. The sigh was the only thing that came out of the young man after hearing Isabella and seeing the other female knight descending towards him. Then he noticed that Carloman had loosened her grip on his weapon, so he pushed the sword away from her forearm and he took her hand, moving her forward. She didn't know what he wanted to do until she saw how he used his own sword to block Cirrus's aerial slash. Furthermore, Shulin's punches were becoming slower and slower. His plan to tire her out had worked, so it wasn't difficult to grab her right wrist and use it as a sack to ward off the other tower and both swordsmen. Fortunately, the girl managed to get free and regrouped with the others. The four pieces remained totally alert to any movement that her opponent might make from now on. Shit. Some of his blows did hurt me a little. The comments of the boosted gear wearer had already gotten more than one mad. But they had to hold back their anger and just backed away. Be honest, right? Do you know anything else besides trying to mutilate or beat a fool? Hey, Sekiryuutei in the sky, there were the two pieces that had not participated yet, of which one spoke with quite confidence. The former's appearance is her striking purple wavy hair, a dress composed of a navy blue tunic with shiny details, a blue skirt with open sides, thigh-high stockings with black shoes, and a golden choker with blue and red jewels. It was the Phoenix Queen, Yubaluna, who caught the attention of the boy. Behind her, there was a young girl wearing a kimono with patterns of purple, orange and pink colors, with her traditional hairstyle of two clips on each side of her head. Staying silent, Mihi, the second bishop of Razor's entourage, he helped his partner gather as much power as possible through a faint white light placed in his hands. What do you want? Asking what the woman wanted, the mysterious guy realized that her scepter was overflowing with magical power. Combined with that, the bishop seemed to be helping her gather magic every second. She immediately knew what they had planned. You'll use some of your best spells, won't you? Well, I'm looking forward to what the bomb queen can do. DCH. Disappear. After saying that, a ray of purple magic shot out from the purple-haired girl's rune staff, so the Red Emperor Dragon extended his right hand, invoking a kind of defensive magic circle. Yubaluna became confident after seeing the masked man's vain effort to resist her best technique. What a surprise she had when she saw how her magical shield withstood every particle of the spell's power. At the moment the blast stopped, the magic circle seemed intact. But suddenly it shattered into pieces like a mirror. The remaining fragments floated until the stranger closed his fist and they were absorbed by the gem of the gauntlet that shone for a moment. Then the gem of the other hand began to release a layer of magic that covered the entire left gauntlet. My turn. As soon as the boy finished speaking, he launched the accumulated energy of his hand, in the form of a scarlet destructive ray, towards where the two demons were who were slow to react. Well, that is in the case of Mihi, since she didn't even have time to move and only felt a sharp pain throughout her body before falling defeated. Meanwhile Queen Phoenix, she barely managed to dodge most of such a wave of power. Half of her clothes were burned and her left leg was injured. According to some of those present, tonight's spectacle they were fortunate enough to witness was incomparable to most raiding games they have seen in their long lives. Even if one of their own is being decimated along with his slaves, they couldn't help but admire the current Sekiryuutei to a certain extent. But not everything was rosy for one of the guests. For Sona Citri, the counterattack recently shown by the hooded man was very similar to the sacred gear ability of one of her servants. Because of this, many theories began to arise in his mind to try to know how special the boy is. What I know about all the wielders of the boosted gear is that none of them had the ability to redirect an attack with double the power like that guy did. The student council president thought seriously, sipping a little from her glass. It's probably that he managed to create that technique. It may be. But in the worst case, is it possible that he has more than one sacred gear at his disposal? The black-haired woman was going to continue in her world until the curiosity of seeing what will happen in the fight won. Then he will investigate calmly. Negative emotions abounded among the Phoenix demons who were still standing, even Razor, who was observing everything from a relatively safe distance. Among all those sensations, anger, fear and helplessness were the most latent. Incredible, he returned Yubaluna's attack with double the force, Carloman concluded, looking askance at the enigmatic man in the crimson armor. But one of them will not easily accept that he is not even close to surpassing his adversary, so he simply let himself be carried away by his fury before launching himself into battle again. He's just a bastard, hopefully. I'm going to show you. Cirrus, wait. The chestnut tower tried to make her companion see reason, but it was useless when she ran towards the Welsh dragon. Ugh, there's no other way. Let's go with her. Are they coming for the second round? The Red Emperor dragon joked. The fact that the girl was trying to decapitate him was enough for him to know, in addition to seeing how the other three come to her position. I think so. Boost 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 boost. The mysterious guy just dodged every slash Cirrus tried to land while raising his power, which only increased his frustration. Although the stranger is enjoying the fight, he knew it was time to end the fight. So taking advantage of the moment when the female knight stuck her sword into the ground for another attempt to hurt him, the young man channeled frost into his hands and feet to the surprise of the blue-haired girl. And before he even moved away he was already centimeters away from her. The masked man kicked him in the knee, breaking it instantly, along with a blow to the right cheek and to top it off another one to the stomach. Considering the fact that the ice increased the damage caused, it was to be expected that a lot of damage was caused. Blood came out of his mouth and he collapsed to the floor. The girls who came stopped after seeing the combo of blows that the Sekiryuutei dealt to Cirrus. The remaining horse engulfed its weapon in flames accompanied by both towers. In the case of the oriental-looking girl, she greatly enhanced her fists with her fire to do the greatest amount of damage that she is capable of generating, and when they were ready, they took out their demon wings to start an aerial combat. But her opponent was not far behind either and took out the wings of her armor to rise several meters apart, with him at a relative disadvantage due to the difference in height. You fought well. Isabella confessed, saving her pair of wings to plummet like a bullet, ready to hit the stranger. But this ends here and now. I agree, neither had any intention of stopping. Both had their fists raised and ready to collide, but the boy's sudden increase in speed caught the tower off guard and disappeared from his range of vision. Or so he thought, because then a powerful right hand landed on his entire face, and as a consequence he was descending rapidly. Dejected. Instead, the Welsh dragon stopped short until it was sure that the demon had already touched the ground. The loud sound plus the crater that was generated was proof enough. The others saw his fist that now didn't have the ice it had a while ago. It was now covered by a layer of stone, which disappeared when he opened his hand. That was. Queen Phoenix said to herself, intrigued, appearing next to the other two. Her legs still had traces of burns, but the sensation is tolerable. By observing the recent actions of the hooded man, she comes to a hypothesis: does he know elemental magic? And courtesy of a great Valkyrie, the Red Emperor dragon could hear Eubaluna's murmur, so he only confirmed his suspicions very calmly. So that he immediately resumed his flight in the direction of the pieces, now with his reinforced arms with electricity. But the armored guy said impressed Surziches and Grafia. Somehow, it became harder for them to predict what he would do next. Harleman and Shulin also went forward, and the second confrontation has just begun. Both demons made an effort not to give the Sekiryuutei a single break. They attacked together, the small opening that existed in each movement was covered by the other. Between slashes and punches, the Phoenix Queen tried to give the boy small but formidable explosive spells every time the girls attacked him to harm him even a little. The young man, like last time, was limited to just dodging or blocking depending on the attack. And hitting the air occasionally. Stay still. The purple-haired girl was losing her patience more and more with each failed shot. Due to the woman in the kipau's carelessness, the stranger managed to kick her in the chest, which made her collide with her companion, and he quickly gathered all the electrical energy into a kind of yellow lightning. Which he did not hesitate to throw it at them. Prius. The great roar echoed throughout the place. Since Shulin was in front, she was the one who received the impact in its entirety. And even though Carleman was behind, she also felt how that powerful electric shock ran through every corner of her body. Just as both pieces imagined, they are falling like a meteorite. Like Isabella a while ago. Eubaluna was the only one on the opposing side who was still in the air, which resulted in her now being in the crosshairs of the boosted gear wielder. She already experienced a small sample of its power, for obvious reasons it is not known. It will stay there still. There's only you and your idiot master left. The masked man was the first to speak after a brief silence, something that tense and angered the Phoenix Queen, who had half of her face covered by a lock of hair. What are you going to do? Without receiving a response, the demon simply retreated a few meters before whispering a few words. He did not understand what he wanted the woman to do. Until he saw how several lilac magic circles formed around him. These began to emanate demonic energy in large quantities, while a sphere of the same color as the circles was created in the purple-haired woman's staff. This could possibly be his definitive spell. As soon as that orb finished, the bomb queen screamed angrily, while the projectile was fired in conjunction with the circles that generated an explosion, followed by many more. All to kill the unbearable Red Emperor dragon. The gigantic cloud of smoke did not take long to form in the environment. The purple-haired woman was breathing hard, along with a satisfied smile, which disappeared the moment she discovered his adversary still in the air, without a single scratch. How is that possible? Disbelief was evident on Euboluna's face. And her stuttering didn't help at all. How the hell did you survive? I apologize for that, the truth is that. The Welsh dragon spoke so that, at a fleeting speed, he appeared millimeters from the Phoenix Queen. I'm still not making an effort. The woman froze and didn't even bother to protect her abdomen from the boy's next blow, this time enveloped in his own aura. She knew too late that she never had a chance against him. Finding herself close to fainting, the only thing she could do was stare at nothing, before falling into the void. To her bewilderment, something of her held his arm. She focused on her environment to see what was happening, and it was the stranger who saw her in complete silence. She then heard the flapping of his wings, and as she sensed, he also descended little by little until she finally reached the level of the floor. He gently placed her on the ground before looking at her out of the corner of his eye one last time. Although he had not seen her face, he perceived her look of compassion directed at her, even with a helmet and mask in between her. But the small scene was interrupted by the gasps of someone near her. It was Carmesí, the female knight, who was incredibly still standing, although hunched over and small sparks erupting from her. Behind the girl, the Shulan tower lay, knocked out and half buried in the ground. The sword she was carrying ended up several meters away from where she was, so she pulled out a dagger she had tucked into her belt behind her hip, and the blade was engulfed in flames. My duty is protecting my master. From guys like you, said the female knight, almost crawling towards the hooded man. When she reached him, she raised her blade to try to stab him in the heart. It's my role. See is a servant of our Razor Sama. The horse's desperate attempt to defeat her opponent was deflected by the Red Emperor Dragon's hand, and he brought her closer to whisper a few last words. You have honor, girl, the Sekiryuutei said quietly, leaving Carmesí with her mouth open and causing him to drop her weapon. It's something I deeply respect. Subsequently, the mysterious guy gives her an accurate blow on the neck, causing her to faint in his arms, and does the same thing as with the bomb queen. Lay her delicately on the floor. All before the incredulous gaze of the aforementioned, who in the end she couldn't continue either, and like the others, she collapsed. The spectators had been speechless for a long time, but this went further. Not only is this generation's boosted gear wielder powerful and nowhere near having defeated an entire nobility, he can also be merciful to some of them. His opponents, behavior that is considered unusual among those belonging to the elite of the underworld. Unfortunately, not everyone thinks the same. Among them was the Phoenix heir, who stayed on the sidelines after his outburst of fury, as he was invaded by a strong murderous instinct directed at the insolent dam who interrupted his engagement party. And to make matters worse, she has just humiliated him and his slaves in front of the nobles. I guess I have to face you, the masked man mentioned reluctantly, slowly moving away from the dejected girls with the intention of facing Razor. This won't stay like this, do you hear me, Sekiryuutei? The blonde exclaimed more than angrily, taking out his flaming wings and rising a little. Loud and clear, the Welsh dragon said jokingly with his thumb up. But he left the comedy for another occasion and also became serious. Let's finish this. Both went at great speed towards each other, inaugurating the final combat. When they collided, an immense sound wave was generated, shaking even the most resistant foundations of the Colosseum. They began an aerial struggle from which neither wanted to give up. Holding on and looking directly into each other's eyes, after a while, the first to act was the Phoenix heir, kneeing the armored subject in the torso. Not even a scratch had been made. The stranger knew that the fried chicken would try to hit him to hurt him at any cost, so he managed to break away from the initial grip with a kick to establish distance between them. Damn annoying boy, the blonde shouted angrily, causing more embers to be released that formed around him a silhouette very similar to a legendary entity. This is the fire of the phoenix. The bird of fire. The immortal bird, take it and burn for eternity. And without hesitation, the high-class demon launched himself, covered by his power, towards the stranger, who chose to move away from the fiery guy named Razor. Agilely flying over the entire arena, the boy evaded all types of fiery projectiles coming from the Phoenix heir, frustrating him greatly. At one point, the two combatants had already crossed each end of the place without stopping. Stop moving, the blonde's courage was about to reach its peak. And the young man noticed it, so he increased his speed to climb and be even higher. Boost, 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 boost. When he reached the height he wanted, he stowed his wings and, through a very sharp turn, activated the thrusters on his back to go downwards. To be more precise, and simple, he was heading to Razor for a second collision of powers. I will reduce you to ashes. Your regeneration will not help you. The two raised their fists, ready to clash them and defeat their enemy. Nothing and no one could stop them. I am. Not only did another sound wave reverberate throughout the stage, the explosion brought with it a flash of light so blinding that part of the supernatural audience had to cover their eyes. When the vision of the rest was restored, a silhouette was falling, quite injured. It was about fried chicken itself, shocking the most conservative-minded demons. But unlike the Phoenix nobility, this one was caught in the middle of his fall by the Sekiryuutei. Thinking that he would end the fight, they carefully observed that the boy was holding Razor by the face, and without warning, he slammed him into the ground. Stone without stopping or letting go. He was wiping the floor with his face. Literally. He toured the battlefield for the umpteenth time, and it was not until the hooded man reached near the wall of the Colosseum that he stuck his foot into the ground to stop. Without taking its eyes off the blonde and turning on its own axis, the Welsh dragon threw the phoenix heir against the wall with enormous force, cracking it instantly. "I thought you would give more of yourself," said the stranger in a neutral tone, contenting himself with seeing the fried chicken having a trickle of blood running down its mouth. "Cough cough cc shut up," said a weakened Razor trying to keep his eyes on the damned boy. "Look around you. Your servants gave their best and you don't even care." Growl shut up. He approached again, slowly detaching himself from the wall. "And in the end, you turned out to be nothing more than another selfish demon bastard," I said. "Shut up." The desperate scream of the high-class demon was enough for him to rise again and summon a large burning sphere from his hand, which had the objective of incinerating the Red Emperor dragon. "I'll make sure to char every fiber of your miserable being. I'll show you a real flame." Meanwhile, small sparks were emerging from the gauntlets and the masked man's breastplate, which soon transformed into embers. It doesn't need to be huge or visually striking. Every second as it passed, the flame spread throughout the chest area. Until a layer made of pure fire was formed. The flame of a dragon must only fulfill its purpose: destroy everything in its path. And without thinking twice, the wearer of the boosted gear fired his fervent hot orb just like Razor. Although the Phoenix Heir's sphere was larger than the boy's spell, seeing how it passed through its fire as if nothing had happened, it terrified him. "And it's not possible," the demon stammered, watching the wave of fire go towards him. "If that thing hits him, now he would end up like real fried chicken." Ani Samaya. The scream of horror from the brat named Ravel deafened those who were in the place. At the same time, panic spread in a flash. Believing that this would be his grave, the only thing Razor could do was freeze in fear without even taking his eyes off the searing projectile of his adversary. Feeling his life flash before his eyes, a few memories too came to his mind. For the Phoenix Heir, time was going much slower. For some reason, he was able to look away from the stranger's orb, and through his enhanced sight, he caught sight of his despondent slaves. For the first time in a long time, a feeling invaded his heart. The feeling called guilt. "I am so sorry, girls." With that last thought present, the blonde closed his eyes waiting for his supposed end. Which, fortunately, will not be today. Seconds after assuming his destiny. Nothing had happened yet, baffling the Phoenix clan demon. Subtly opening his eyes, he saw that there was no longer any flame from his enemy. Checking his surroundings in more detail, there was a huge hole in the wall on the right side of him. He touched the inside from the hole and it was very hot. Without yet understanding what happened, a teleportation circle with the seal of his clan manifested in front of him, and from it came a Ravel Phoenix ready to protect him as if acting as a human shield. Or demonic. It does not matter, but like his expression was one of genuine surprise. "What he is?" The disbelief in Razor's words is more than obvious. Looking further into the distance, the Welsh dragon was still in the same pose since it launched its flare, but with a slight difference. He moved his hands to the right. Taking that into account, it didn't take him long to infer what happened. Why not? Why didn't I finish you off? It was for two things. Checking the blonde's assumptions, the young man resumed a more relaxed posture before continuing to explain. 1. I'm not allowed to kill, and 2. There is something called mercy. After finishing explaining his reasons, the armor guy turned around to calmly leave the stage as the winner. But a shrill voice stopped him. "Are you just going to leave like that?" exclaimed the fried chicken's younger sister, going in the direction of the masked man to continue yelling at him. "You must pay for the scare you gave me." The author of such complaints remained cautious and quietly listened to every demand the girl said to compensate her. 10 seconds later, having had more than enough, the Sekiryuutei addressed the Phoenix Heir once more, completely ignoring the petite blonde. He continued to claim. "Hey. You're lucky to have a sister like her," the armored man confessed to Razor, who remained sitting without saying a word and silencing Ravel, who looked away embarrassed and blushing. Take care of her." Finally, the mysterious guy was finally able to fly away from the Colosseum, which was already fading like every piece of the Phoenix Heir's nobility, but in small particles of light, surely to be taken to where they could treat his wounds. The youngest of the Phoenixes helped her brother to stand up and also walk away from the place so that she could rest. After all, it had been a long night. Meanwhile, the spectators, the bustle regarding the result of the fight did not wait. There were divided opinions, from the astonishment of the youngest to the disagreement of those most attached to the traditional ideals of demonic culture. For the princess of the Scarlet Ruin, the interference of a Longinus bearer was more than opportune, in addition to the fact that a forced marriage like hers was something that she could perfectly ignore. That he helped her moved her like never before, so much that she wanted fly out to thank the hooded man. Something he will have to do another time, since he had already gone a long way away. On the side of Mao Lucifer, who kept his mouth shut for most of the fight, knows what he will have to deal with for the next few months, whether it be endless piles of paperwork or the noisy members of the Demon Council. But the radiant smile, the happiness that her little sister showed, made her downplay that. "Serziches, is everything okay?" Grafia asked silently due to the fact that her king was still observing the projection of the field. "My father and the leader of the Phoenix House seemed sorry," the Crimson Satan mentioned, remembering the amused expressions of both demons. Upon learning of the hooded man's victory over Razor, unfortunately, the engagement was annulled. "Is it really unfortunate?" the maid questioned, trying to look the retreat in her eyes. And noticing a small detail. "Your expression tells me something else." "I didn't imagine that the Welsh dragon would be the one to help," Mao Lucifer said calmly, and watching the tender scene of the group hug that Riaz and his friends were giving each other. "Your encounter with the vanishing dragon may be sooner than we think," the silver-haired woman added. "Taking into account the history of each wielder of the celestial dragons, it is certain that the happy event is just around the corner." "Yes. But that's a problem for another day." Leaving the conversation there, the demon duo went with the crimson-haired girl to join in the emotional gesture of relief. Although the Redeed stopped to take one last look at her. The magic screen. A mini scarlet flash was the only thing he made out. In the distance of the night sky, the stranger continued his course in the air without stopping. Meanwhile, he undid his case by revealing his peculiar mask as the gem on his left gauntlet shone. "It went well," the jewel suddenly spoke, taking the boy unprepared. "Do you think?" the stranger asked uncertainly, thinking that he went further than necessary. "Of course. You acted and fought very well, partner." "He thanks Drake," said the wearer of the boosted gear, even giving himself the luxury of enjoying the stars on his journey. "Let's go home. I must be ready for when Kakabiel and Vali appear." "Well said, that's how you talk." But that said, the boy charged his other hand with magic to open a transportation rift. And that is how one more arc of events ends in the current timeline for the Sekiryuutei. The following events may become more interesting not only for him, but for everyone who relates to his alter ego who has managed to capture the attention of many. Chapter 12. Temporary Normality. Cry cry, cry cry. It's another ordinary night here in Kuo. The light of the stars illuminating the forest. The chirping of a few crickets around. The pleasant silence that formed at times. The beautiful lighting that it provided the natural satellite of our planet Earth, and as a little extra, today is a full moon. Nothing could ruin this pleasant atmosphere. I, Hyōdō, could not ask for anything more. While I try to enjoy the night landscape, I will talk about everything that has happened since last week. That is, since my confrontation with Razor and his nobility occurred. Just the day after beating the grilled chicken, the boys returned immediately and I saw them walking to the academy as if nothing had happened. I had to be very convincing with my surprised expressions to see them again, since Kiba told me. He said that they would stay permanently in the underworld. Although I was happy to still be able to see them at school, the only complaint I have is that the amount of paperwork has increased significantly, and not just on Ria's side. Since I promised to help Sona from time to time at the council, my hand already hurts from writing apology documents or shredding hate letters. Another little thing that worries me is that everyone who went to Ria's engagement party, including her, is more withdrawn and immersed in her thoughts, mainly Kaichu. Hopefully my intrusion as the Sekiryuutei is not the reason for this. All that aside, I still haven't asked my friends how Ria's got out of her marriage, or why her minds are so busy. I mean, I'm still pretending to not know until they decide to reveal the truth to me. But it hasn't all been just boring formalities, the contracts and subjugation jobs have continued at their normal pace. In fact, one of those is the reason I'm in the forest. I am sitting on the branch of one of the tallest pine trees there, and I am wearing the same clothes that I wore to go to the wedding ceremony, including my mask. From now on, this will be my definitive outfit for when I wear the boosted gear. I'm not alone either. And I'm not talking about Drake, since he's sleeping. But I'm having a conversation with someone through a communication circle located in my right ear. "How's everything going over there? In the underworld?" I said while taking a chocolate bar out of my pants pocket. "Everything has been very hectic. Since your unexpected presentation at my sister's party, several leaders from different clans have come to me to demand answers," the man from the communication circle responded, and from what he said, obviously this is my good demon friend Serziches. You know, one of the foremass of the underworld, nicknamed the Crimson Satan, Ria's older brother, blah blah blah. "I'm sorry for you. But I'm sure you can handle it." "Yum yum," I replied, taking a bite of my candy. "How can I eat with a mask on?" "Simple. Magic." "You said it." Serziches humored me without much enthusiasm. If the nobles are already insistent, there is a much worse group. Gulp. And the members of the council. When we talk about the members of the demon council, everything is different. They are like mosquitoes buzzing around your head all day non-stop. Well, most of them it is like this. I want to believe that there is at least one more open-minded. Same. Maybe worse, and it's not just me saying it, my brother-in-law from another life thinks the same. That sounded strange. I'd better continue calling him Serziches or Lucifer, depending on the situation we're in although. I stopped eating the moment I perceived insecurity in Serziches' voice. You know. That the talk we had before the ceremony was interrupted. I said without a hint of delicacy. The truth is that talk had a tense start. 10 minutes before my intrusion into Ria's engagement party. I remember that night as if it had been yesterday. The throne room in the underworld is a place that is already a privilege to be able to stand there. Most of those who have set foot in this room, with the exception of the mass, do so in order to deal with matters of utmost importance or those that require keeping secret. In my case, I had been absorbed by my magic circle, and instead of being in my bedroom, I was transported to the place I have described. The room lacked lighting, which is not a problem for me. It just gave it a more funereal air. I had two people in front of me, the first being Serziches, the closest to me in terms of distance, maintaining a formal posture as well as his neutral expression, while next to him was Grafia, her faithful queen and wife, who like her husband remained completely silent, staring at me as if she were trying to find out something. He's finally calling. I crossed my arms and was the one who started the conversation to try to calm the atmosphere. Who are you and why did you give your pamphlet to my wife? Serziches said almost as if we were in an interrogation. Wait, let's go step by step. Choosing to reassure Serziches, I suggested going at an appropriate pace before continuing. Also, I should be the one to ask, why did you decide to contact me? Serziches remained silent at my question. I remember taking the risk to deduce what he thought. Don't tell me. You want to get your sister out of this predicament, but you don't have another solution in mind, right? I questioned, holding the chin of the mask to think more clearly, but without stopping to observe Serziches, who was he exalted subtly. Yes, Serziches confesses, resigned to his and Ria's reality. Okay, I said quickly, and I barely realized that I spoke as if I were going to retract it. I must be more careful with my words. As the pamphlet said, I will help you. Oh really? Sure. But in exchange for something, I mentioned, crossing my arms again. Although I don't like making these kinds of deals, I must do it. This will be vital for the future. Or at least mine. Depending on what you want, I'll tell you if it's within my reach, Serziches responded quite distrustfully. I hope he accepts my demand. A favor, huh? He muttered, confused. I think he expected him to ask for something more complex. Since you heard it. You will owe me a favor. I confirmed that what my good demon friend heard was true. In the process I will clarify any other uncertainty. Don't hurry, I'm not going to use it against you and your people. If you put it that way, it seems reasonable to me. Serziches accepted, now calmer. He was turning around to go to my destination. But he stopped me to discuss one more matter. Before you leave, I would like to know two things. As long as it's not related to my identity, it's fine, I suddenly blurted out, turning to look at him. It's necessary to save him a question that I'm not going to answer. Because you helped me? To be honest with you, I don't know, I commented using a nostalgic tone. Actually I know why I do it, but I can't say it out loud. I better make something up. Maybe I just don't like this one type of events. Grafia only kept her eyes on me. If looks could kill, I would be lying on the ground since I arrived. I'm fine with that, said Serziches, half satisfied. I was wondering what the other thing was that he wanted to know, although it was easy to think that it was. But how can I trust you? You'll see when the time is right, I said, preferring to save my best cards for another occasion and put my hands in my pants pockets, ready to leave. Besides, I'm good at giving shows. Wait, Serziches stops me once again. From his stuttering and body language, I'd say he's anxious. Can I do anything to help? In fact, yes, I quickly devised some aspect that would cause me problems in which I would need Serziches to support me and stop feeling bad about all this mess. Go prepare a convincing speech as soon as I interrupt the party. They will surely wonder what I'm doing. There. And I don't like to give explanations. I understand, my red-haired friend finished, more than determined. I won't see this moment of weakness that he has shown me very often. Now I'll ask you for something else, I added, surprising both of them. Taking advantage of the fact that Serziches sounds more refreshed, I'll make sure to save myself more problems. I have never liked politics. I'll take care of all that. Please go. And when I thought everything had already been clarified and agreed upon, Serziches walked to reduce the distance between us and with something in hand. He seemed to want to give me back my brochure. But before that happened, I stopped him with my hand. Save it. That will also help him contact me directly. Saying that, he just nodded and I put my hand in my pants pocket while he said goodbye with the other. With all that already settled, now I was able to go to my destination. The Phoenix territory. I remember perfectly how Serziches took a more upright and confident attitude upon discovering at the party that I was the bearer of this generation's boosted gear. Drake says that he was very lucky that someone as powerful as us take pity on her situation. Although there is some truth in that, I also do not rule out the fact that I swear that I would save and protect Riaz as many times as necessary. And I plan to fulfill it no matter what. But not just her. But all the people I care about. Yeah, don't worry about that, I said softly. I know he remains doubtful, at the end of the day I'm still not someone to trust, I always keep my promises. Thank you for understanding, said Serziches, now more relaxed. A weight less for him, I guess. By the way, what are those noises? My meeting. Gulp. Sorry, I apologized, believing he was being rude. It's not that. I hear more distant sounds, like a fight. Well, the reality is that at the same time he spoke with Serziches, an intense and bizarre battle took place in this place. That I finished the bar in 2 bites and proceeded to tell my dear Redeed what I saw. Gulp. I'm witnessing how his sister and her entourage fight a breast-eating plant dragon. What an awkward silence. Should I be worried? I don't think. This is something they can handle alone, I mentioned confidently and creating a small orange magic circle where I threw the chocolate wrapper. This is a magical incinerator also, I exaggerated with the breast-eater thing. Within my range of vision, I could see Riaz and the others trying hard to hurt the chimera, but its regeneration gave them a lot of trouble. Neither Akeno-san's lightning nor Ria's destruction power were strong enough to do significant damage. But why did such a monster arise? To begin with, a few days ago several girls had missed school due to anemia, then Mitsuda and Motohoma showed up to tell me that all the girls who got sick were exclusively those with big breasts. It may have sounded ridiculous, but what I discovered later left me speechless. Words. It turns out that there was a renegade demon who performed various kinds of strange experiments, such as substances of dubious origin, insect-eating plants that he had never seen, and insects that has breasts. Luckily, he was captured by the Gremory nobility and taken into custody. Shortly after, it was discovered that the cause of the anemia in the sick girls was formed after being attacked with large amounts of demonic magic, and that the demon they were chasing was an alchemist with an unusual goal, which I will say next. A plant. But we are not talking about just any one. This one is shaped like a dragon and is capable of absorbing the spiritual energy of women, using hers breasts as a connection, and to top it off, with the energy collected, he created a type of fruit that had the shape of a breast, and supposedly, if the woman ate a little of that fruit, her breasts would grow faster. Basically, that demon wanted to make all women have big breasts. At first, I couldn't believe it. That chimera could be the key to achieving world peace. Just imagine, girls with flat chests would no longer have to worry about having it like this forever. A little of this wonderful fruit and voila. Happiness achieved. Well, that's what I thought at the beginning. Yes, maybe men are happy, but what if there are girls who are not interested in having big breasts? What if they are happy the way they are? What if having big breasts is nothing more than a small bonus? I was being very selfish by thinking that I had to protect that mutated plant at any cost. I can't force anyone to consume that fruit, much less let such a goal be achieved by making the girls it uses as a source of energy sick. I almost forgot, I'm sure that if there is a woman who wants to have a bigger bust. If that's the case, plastic surgery doesn't exist for nothing. And besides, I will only be able to see, but not touch. Thinking about it, it will be more torture than a blessing. Now, how I found out about all this is because 2 days ago it was Serziches himself who personally asked me to back up Riaz, Sona and their servants for the next few days, because his spies in the Vatican they informed him that some of the fragments of the legendary sword Excalibur were stolen. With this, a conspiracy could already be taking place in Kuo, which would put not only the human world at risk, but could trigger another large-scale conflict between the supernatural factions. Most likely it will be that damn cadre. He didn't mention any immediate action on the part of the church, but they will almost certainly send the best they have at their disposal to investigate this mess. I hope so. That has led me here. I watched from the shadows as they subdued the renegade demon who in turn was looking for clues in his laboratory of the alchemist's possible plans. That is how I discovered what the breast-eating monster does and its location. Anyway, I will intervene if the situation gets complicated. I mentioned seeing how the laboratory monster had trapped all the girls of the Gremory group with its vines. I have a bad feeling if you want to clarify any doubts, asked Miss Lucifuge. Why? Serziches asked confused. Some of the vines had a kind of strange mouth, from which an enzyme came out that, when touched, melted their clothes. At this rate they will be naked. Because she is talking to the Redeed right now, and sure enough, a silver hologram appeared in front of Riaz. At the same time that the strange plant moths got closer and closer to each one's breasts until. Aye, that's right. They began to suck them, possibly to suck their energy. And I think they also suppressed their magic to prevent them from breaking free. This scene reminds me of a hentai category. But what the hell am I doing? This is not the time to be thinking about porn. I have to assume he's scolding her, I said, uncomfortable hearing the loud moans coming from Akeno-san, Rias, Asia and Kaneko-chan. I think I just had a nosebleed. Shit, now I have to clean the inside the mask. I don't think I want to know the origin of those moans. Moans? Incredible as it may seem, Surziches didn't know what he was talking about. I'd better leave it here before you get any strange ideas. Forget it, I commented, avoiding the topic of the lewd sounds that were in the background. I just cleared my throat to continue. Isn't there anything else I should know? I have new information, Surziches responds, just as I hear whispers inaudible to me on the other side. They inform me that the higher-ups of the church will send 2 exorcists to Kuo, for reasons I still do not know. It may be related to the conspiracy thing I inferred, still looking at the piho-eating monster absorbing the girl's energy. I was impressed that Heaven decided to get going immediately. And I hope it's the 2 of them that come. If I discover anything else I'll let you know. I will ask Grafia to communicate this whole matter to Rias later. Surziches added for any important development that may occur. Well, if that's all. Wait. I stopped at what my red-haired friend said. I was already going to provide support to Rias and others. Thanks again, Sekiryuutei. I forgot this detail. How will I keep my identity a secret? I'll have to get used to being called Sekiryuutei whenever and wherever I am. It doesn't matter. We're still in contact, and without further ado I cut off communication with Surziches. He asked me what Kiba is doing, because the moaning hasn't stopped even a little, and I thought he would have already done something to stop it. Rather, that is the case with Rias and Akeno-san, as Asia and Kaneko-chan fell after the plant released them. At least Kiba caught Asia before she got hurt. I have a sneaking suspicion he dumped them because of the size of her breasts. In any case, the confrontation continued. To my uncertainty, Kaneko-chan uprooted a tree from the ground and started hitting the dragon with it as hard as he could. I don't even want to imagine what happened that made him do that. That chimera reminds me of cough cough. Someone cough. Meanwhile, the green gem in my left hand manifests itself, and the first thing Drake does is bother me. The super developed lizard doesn't even know how to hide. Oh. Leave me alone, I complained tiredly at the dragon's mockery and my being more than desperate by the lewd sounds coming out of Rias and Akeno-san. I stood up on the branch and chose to get involved. Once and for all, before all my neurons melted. Boosted gear. The crimson gauntlet materialized on my hand and I focused on waiting for the perfect moment, and as if the world had heard me, Kiba finally managed to cut the vines that were keeping Rias and Akeno-san prisoner. In their expressions I can see that they can't think of any other idea to deal with the plant dragon. Boost boost boost. This will be enough. I charged a little power and proceeded to create a tiny red orb, like a miniature dragon shoot, which I threw at the chimera. Upon impact, it let out a loud grunt of pain. If he had used a normal-sized dragon shoot, he would have wiped out half the forest by accident. From what I can see, the others didn't know what had happened. But I didn't even give them time to react when I pointed at Rias and then whispered, "Boosted gear gift transfer," and immediately, a green beam shot out that hit the entirety of her. Everyone without exception worried about her, but that feeling disappeared after seeing how she was covered by a scarlet and green aura emanating large amounts of magic. Still not understanding what was happening, Rias did not hesitate to take advantage of the sudden increase in power and created an immense crimson western dragon, made entirely of the power of destruction. The breast-eating monster was still recovering from the powerful attack it received from my rear, and it was not until it saw Ria's spell that he immediately knew that he no longer had an escape. She cast her spell and it pulverized the chimera in its entirety, leaving nothing but an immense crater where he once stood for a misunderstood living being. Or far ahead of his time. Then you get philosophical. Drake interrupted that and many other thoughts he had about the plant dragon. At least let me pray that she goes to a place where she is appreciated. The paradise of breasts. Perhaps let's go before let them see you. Well, resigned to the suggestion of the mutant lizard, I let myself fall back and spread my wings to glide, getting lost in the thickness of the forest. Tomorrow I will ask them yes or yes about the issue of commitment. The next day. Hyōdō, just another normal student at Kuo Academy, was standing and looking at the school courtyard through one of the windows of the occult research club. He had gotten lost in a sea of thoughts, something unbelievable. Common for someone like him. The blonde could have stayed like that longer if it weren't for the fact that there was someone who wanted to talk to him. For 5 minutes. Kiba, a boy who wanted the blonde's attention, constantly said, but he still ignored him, so he resorted to plan B. He took a deep breath and… Kabaya. The Gremory Knight jumped a little from fright. He felt it like a bucket of cold water ice. "I'm sorry, friend, but that's the only way you would listen to me," the boy replied, somewhere between firm and embarrassed. He has never liked to raise his voice like that. And Kiba is not the only case, since everyone present in the room was the same. Rias, Asia, Akeno and Kaneko kept their minds elsewhere, leaving the brunette completely disconcerted. In fact, with the scream that Issei let out, the others also reacted. What happened, Ice? The Redeed said from his desk, resuming an attitude that nothing happened and knowing that he needed the brunette. This folder arrived from the student council from Kaichu. He wanted me to give it to you, Issei explained with everyone listening attentively. Because he was the center of attention, the boy rushed through his monologue. But he wasn't listening to me. And then I went with Kiba and the same thing happened, then I did what I just did, and that's how we got to this point. I'm sorry Ice, the truth is that a lot has happened in such a short time. The Gremory heiress apologized in the best way she could. Since she appreciates the brunette's concern. And no but you, forgive me. I shouldn't have been so impertinent. The boy, for his part, rushed to blame himself for whatever he had done. Or not, because he came with a present goal. Guys, it's not to pressure you but are you okay? Was what happened there in the underworld that serious? Those two questions were enough for the members of the Gremory entourage to go blank again, since they do not have the slightest idea of what to answer. Because their conflicts are how to explain to an ordinary human that the possessor of a legendary dragon helped a capricious, high-class demon save herself from a forced marriage. Fortunately, Rias, like the leader she is, stood up from her chair and let out a resigned sigh. Akeno, meanwhile, knew that her best friend was planning to tell everything, so she left the tray she was carrying on the coffee table and sat down. He approached where she was. But are you sure to talk about this with Ice-kun? The Gremory queen whispered doubtfully to her mistress, with the idea that it is something delicate. Of course. It was practically a fact that we would touch that sooner or later, the crimson-haired girl responded, leaving her servant speechless. She was not someone who would talk about things like this with anyone. Besides, I think that Ice has the right to know. The Gremory heiress took a seat in one of the armchairs next to Kaneko, took one of the cups from the tray, and drank the black tea that was on it. Akeno stood behind the blonde without moving a muscle. Issei went to sit next to Asia in the other chair, followed by Kiba, who did the same, ending up on the brunette's left side. The two males took a cup and sipped some of the tea, waiting for whatever the Redeed would say. Ice, what do you know about celestial dragons? The CIO president began the talk by shaking her cup in circles. Very little, said the boy, confused and holding his chin like a child. He drank a little of the fluid and continued. I only know that there were two of them, and they are locked up in Kami knows where. You have a more or less clear idea, so I'll tell you, Ria said, looking at the ceiling. Although several days have passed, she is still shocked by the sudden appearance of the masked man. During the supernatural war that happened centuries ago, two powerful dragons appeared on the battlefield with one intention. To fight to see which of them was stronger. What? Strange rivalry, Issei commented, laughing nervously, blowing into her drink to cool it down a little. They were not affiliated with any faction, so they were free to do as they pleased. In their prime, each dragon was above the power of many gods, and for this reason they were called the celestial dragons, the woman continued. Redeed going to caress the head of her tower, who had his eyes down and was licking a raspberry popsicle regardless of the place or the weather. They never stopped and continued with their fight, without worrying about what was happening around them, not even if they killed someone by accident. That's right, the crimson-haired girl confirmed the mystery of the young man who seemed to be downcast. That's what the girl believed because the brunette didn't take his eyes off his cup. Because of that, the factions put aside their differences to face him. The duo of dragons, and together they managed to defeat them. Incredible, Issei added after having recovered his spirits. The truth is that he was in a trance, since he was mentally apologizing to the mutant lizard that lived on his left arm for the things he has said so far. And those he will say in the not too distant future what happened to them afterwards. As punishment, they lost their physical body and their souls along with their powers, were sealed by the god of the Bible and sacred gears, which would later be classified as mid-level longinus. Rias resumed her explanation, leaving her cup on the tray and closed the doors. Eyes and then crossed her arms. And unconsciously made her breast stand out the pair of silver wings, better known as the divine dividing houses, the white emperor dragon, while the scarlet gauntlet or boosted gear has the dragon red emperor inside. So if they were sealed in sacred gears, what has become of their bearers? The boy spoke, trying not to see Ria's breasts. In each era, the possessors of said longinus become influential people, and as if it were already prescribed, they end up meeting, causing them to end up engaging in a battle to the death, where both almost always perish. That's sad, the honey-eyed boy confessed, also putting his porcelain cup on the table. Believe me, I think the same thing, the Gremory heiress agreed with the young man's thoughts. After considering that she had already said the most important thing, she took a deep breath before touching on what she wanted to talk about first. But well, now the reason for that I told you all this is because the current bearer of the Red Emperor Dragon, or Sekiryuutei if you prefer to call him that, broke into the party venue with the sole intention of opposing the marriage. Really? The boy did not hide his impression with what the high-class demon said. His shocked face was more than enough. Suddenly, the boy noticed that Asia trembled slightly upon hearing what Ria said. But he had to pretend that she didn't notice. Did he just come and do what he wanted? Well, that's one way to put it, the president of the CIO mentioned, and relatively only she and Akeno noticed the ex-nun's trembling. Anyway, and her emotions related to the hooded man still had her confused and fearful, so a look between the two was enough for them to agree to talk to her later. What still surprises me is the bet she made. That he challenged Razor to a direct confrontation, in which they determined that if he won, my engagement would be annulled along with any other that might arise, the crimson-haired girl recapitulated, placing her eyes on the chessboard that was on her desk. Odd as 8 pawns and other remaining pieces are still there. On the other hand, if Razor was the winner, the Sekiryuutei would be willing to become his personal slave. He even risked letting his nobility participate and still won. Did he single-handedly defeat the fried chicken and his harem? Issei said with his eyes wide open at the audacity of the current Red Emperor dragon. Indeed, continued the upper-class demon, more relaxed with matters related to the stranger. It feels good to be able to talk about this with someone apparently common. The strangest thing was her clothing that covered almost her entire body, in addition to the fact that she was wearing a mask that covered his entire face. Like some kind of mega-powerful superhero? The boy asked, while inwardly he was cursing himself for saying such a thing. He would hate to become the typical do-gooder who wouldn't kill a fly and is ridiculously strong from the start. I don't think. He seemed to be capable of killing if necessary, Riaz mentioned, mentally reassuring the young man. At least she and possibly the others share that theory, a sign that he managed to make the first impression he expected. More or less likewise, at no time did he say who he was until he invoked his sacred gear, and then it could mean that he doesn't want to reveal his identity as a person. Or at least not his face, the brunette theorized, stretching out on the couch with all the normality in the universe. Maybe, not even his eyes were visible. I wonder how he can see with that thing on, added the CIO president, massaging her neck a little, infected by Issei's recent action. And his voice was altered to make it, in my opinion, impossible to ignore. So he is a guy who prefers discretion. It's the safest thing, the high-class demon finished, leaving the boy with honey-colored eyes thoughtful. She will evaluate his actions again later. I'm still surprised that Ani-sama agreed to the fight. Ani-sama, Rizevim Lucifer, Butchu's older brother and one of the 4 masks that ruled the underworld Kiba, was in charge of blowing the information to the brunette in his ear about the occupation and relevance of that demon in the marriage ceremony, leaving the previous one speechless. Mentioned. Well, it took 5 seconds for the boy's stupefied expression to surface. Wait, his brother is a demon king. Iggle, did I never tell you? The young man's reaction amused the Grimmery heiress, making her cover her mouth discreetly to hide her expression. She quickly cleared her throat and returned to her neutral tone. You him anyway. When it was all over, he just left without saying a word. Wow, I think I understand more or less why he is the way he is. No offense. I appreciate that you told me that, concluded the boy with honey-colored eyes, scratching his cheek with a finger. He considers that lately he has been very reckless also. It was clearer to me because today Kaichu was colder than usual. Maybe it also generated that image of me and her. Don't worry, it's fine. Although. The Redeed now kept her eyes on the emptiness of the floor. Then a sad smile invades her face and speaking with regret she proceeds to say something that had a direct impact on her. The heart of the chestnut tree. I would have liked to at least thank him. Issei was now speechless. He realized how his actions have brought a wave of emotions to all his classmates, mostly negative. The withdrawn attitude of Kiba and Akeno, that Kaneko is much more reserved than usual, Asia's shiver and Ria's regret. Knowing that everything can go wrong, she quickly stands up, catching the attention of everyone in the room. I'm going to risk a lot, but I can't think of anything better, Issei thought, placing his eyes on Ria's. Trying not to lower his gaze to her breasts. Again, Butchu. With his eyes half closed, which showed empathy and giving him the best smile he could put on, he prepares to speak and. I know they have been through a lot. But I am 100% sure that they will be able to overcome this, and more. The simple words spoken by the brunette made the group of demons look very attentive. And if not, then I will support you in everything and for as long as necessary. Ice-kun. Kiba only managed to say the name of his best friend in the midst of his stupefaction. We are friends, right? And friends help each other. Issei then raised his fist pointing at the blonde, who continued to stare at him. It's true. Shortly after, the Grimmery Knight reacted and did the same. They bumped fists. How about we forget about that for now and do something else? In a fleeting movement, the boy with honey-colored eyes grabbed his suitcase to start rummaging through it, looking for something, and when he stopped his search, he showed the object as if it were an offering to the gods. Look, I found a monopoly in my house. How did you put a box that size in your briefcase, Ice-kun? Said a curious Akeno with raised eyebrows. It's bigger than the briefcase itself. Details, the brunette explained vaguely, downplaying the importance, sitting down on the carpet and beginning to take out the board along with the pieces. Anyway, who wants to play? But Ice, the report you brought me from Sonarias seemed reluctant to participate, since between the endless paperwork and the folder sent by the Citriaris, the work would pile up even more I must review. Then I'll help you with that. Come on, but you, the young man interrupted the retreat in the middle of his excuse. He wasn't willing to take no for an answer. It doesn't hurt to take a little break from time to time. It's not bad if Kaichu doesn't find out. The boy tried hard to convince the crimson-haired girl. That last one made her rethink her position a little. I'll give you the golden duck, she mentioned, taking out the shiny bird, which attracted all the attention of the president of the CIO. If you insist so much, there is no other choice, and with that offer, the Gremory heiress ended up removing the remaining doubts from her mind. The woman had to admit it. Either the boy is good at convincing people, or she is very easy to persuade. Who knows? Well, then I'll be the shoe, Issei finished satisfied, because the others had also chosen his pieces to play with. Even Kaneko came over to take the kitten. Asia also wanted to join, but since she had never played a board game like that, she was afraid to ask. Luckily for her, the brunette wouldn't allow anyone to feel excluded, so he explained the main thing about the game during the first round. Such as purchasing properties and hotels. After making sure that the blonde had understood the basics, he began a quiet gaming session in the abandoned Kuo Academy building for the rest of the afternoon. Even supernatural beings give themselves moments of relaxation like this. Chapter 13. Forgotten Childhood. At your signal, partner. Okay, then. Now, nothing. The interior of the boosted gear is so serene that it's scary. Both the ground and the sky are clear as snow. I was on guard, waiting for whatever Drake had prepared to attack me. I'm training my reflexes with the help of the mutant lizard, so I can react more quickly in the middle of a battle. In simpler words, I want to improve my instinct to be able to dodge or block attacks more quickly and fluidly. Like a sixth sense. It is not something that I will achieve overnight, since what I want seems unattainable, but nothing is with hard work. I will take it upon myself to try it. Suddenly, a spear of light came out of nowhere with the intention of piercing my skull from the left. Luckily I managed to bend down, so that it only grazed my hair. But I knew that this was just beginning. Taking me by surprise, several swords came out of the ground right where I was standing, forcing me to take a big jump back so as not to end up like a skewer. Drake is really taking this seriously. Without warning, more red spears of light approached from all sides and at high speed to riddled every inch of my being. I did my best to avoid them through various pirouettes and from time to time deflecting some of the projectiles with one of the spears that were stuck in the ground. It is much more difficult than it seems. Little by little the rain of weapons stopped, leaving me quite exhausted. I thought I had already finished if it weren't for two arrows that I didn't perceive, which were heading towards my face at full speed. To my bad luck, I couldn't move in time, and when I was waiting for the impact, I opened my eyes to find myself somewhere else, to be more precise in my pocket dimension. I was sitting in the lotus position and my arm is covered by my gauntlet. Bam. I said to myself, since I let my guard down at the last moment. I won't let that happen in a real fight. Drake, let's do it again. Partner, you know I support you, but don't overdo it either, said the talking salamander on my arm, as if he was watching. You've been training for almost 10 hours non-stop. I appreciate your concern, brother, but don't forget that we've been doing something like this for longer. I assured Drake that there's nothing to worry about, since I'm already used to rhythms like this, it's nothing to me. Brat, one thing is physical training, and another is mental training. Forced to listen to my partner's scolding, I proceeded to lean on my arm trying to pay attention. Even if you have a lot of physical resistance, your mind has a limit more defined that if you exceed it, it could leave you with permanent consequences. I can't allow myself to make a single mistake, I reproached, standing up to look up. The purple of space gives me a sensation that I find difficult to describe. Especially if they are the ones who come. I understand you on that part, but you should also worry about yourself. Drake chose to lecture me and remind me that like everyone, I also have limits. If you keep demanding yourself like this, not even your dragon body will last that long. I think it's the best, I sighed and preferred to listen crestfallen to the dragon's recommendation. Then I started walking aimlessly. That and scratching my cheek helps me a lot to think, what can I do? It's early morning and I'm not sleepy. But I do, see you later was the last thing the winged iguana said, and I only felt how he cut off communication with me. I guess he already knows that when he snores he looks like a cow with asthma, so before going to sleep he made sure I can't hear him. Lazy with Drake saying goodbye, I quickly looked at the refrigerator he had in the place, and something occurred to me. If memory serves, I think I had some left over from the cake I bought the other day. It was then that I opened the refrigerator door and found my greatest treasure. A large slice of the cheesecake that I didn't finish. Thanks, Kami. After my overly melodramatic scene, I went to the kotatsu in the center and prepared to devour my precious cake. While eating, I turned on my laptop to watch the next episode of my favorite anime. As the chapter begins, I realized something. I had not taken the trouble to think about the uses I have given to the pocket dimension until now. First I used it to perform an ancient ritual, then as a training room, and now it looks like a warehouse to hang out and store my shit. I know, how radical. Apart from the refrigerator and the kotatsu, I also put the trunk here where I keep various objects from my past, a few shelves with books. And the occasional manga or light novel. I even have a small kitchen to make desserts or dishes that I can't buy on this side of the world. I also got a meditation mat and a package of scented peach scented candles on sale. I sounded like an old man saying that, but don't judge me either, the place smells funny sometimes. The reason this place became what it is now was because my room isn't big enough for everything in here, like the furniture. Plus, both my refrigerator and pantry are full of sweet and salty junk. Of all kinds, and since I am sure that my parents will not accept a diet like that, this stash has become my secret reserve of sweets. But how do I operate electrical devices in a place where there are no outlets, much less electricity? It all boils down to the fact that the Azazel of my past designed a brochure that had a perpetual magic circle that provides electrical energy to any device, be it a simple cell phone or even an entire military base, plus they can withstand electromagnetic pulses. The old man gave me many in case I ever needed them. You just place the connector inside the circle and that's it, electricity for life. I also have a magic long-range antenna to have a signal and Wi-Fi, even on the most desolate island in the world, which was also made by him. These two objects were the last source of energy after all the power plants in the world were shut down. Collapsed in the war. Although the internet antenna also became obsolete when the main network servers collapsed. I am aware of what I have on my property, and I know that perhaps I am not giving it the best use, but I do not plan to use all of it in this way. I've kept the rest in my personal magical storage, along with any other odds and ends I may need, but only in case of a real emergency. It's not bad to treat myself to a little luxury sometimes. But not only do I have leaflets that give energy, I also have others that when stuck on someone, causes them to be covered by purple chains that leave them incapacitated, then a silver one that makes the bearer invisible temporarily. This one is more suitable when the power is required. Stealth. There are many more, but it would take me the rest of the night to explain their appearance and function, so I'll leave it here. My episode is about to begin. A few hours later. Another normal day at school. How strange. Well, maybe, and it's either because my definition of normal involves having Mitsuda and Motohoma trying to convince me to join their gentleman function for the umpteenth time this month, or because no psychopaths have shown up wanting to destroy the world. You know, the typical. At least the school day is almost over and the teacher on duty left us the remaining 5 minutes free. How strange of her, and that the week had just started. But well, among my main concerns, the fact that Asia has not been able to integrate with the rest of the class was one of the ones that had me most concerned. Fortunately, this was not the case, and now she is one of the most beloved girls, resulting in her ending up becoming another of the academy's beauties. Some boys even gave her the title of God's maid, surely because of her past with the church or his face, that, in the words of others, reflects the purest and most beautiful innocence. And you know what, I support that. Although my biggest fear disappeared with the inclusion of Asia, the things she has whispered to me in the middle of classes are mostly of lewd origin, making me uncomfortable and having a hard time keeping my perversion at bay. Obviously she doesn't understand the double meaning of such words, so it didn't take long for me to blame someone. I should have guessed, since I'm friends with the pervert in the class, now her favorite pastime is teasing me, and she even uses cute Asia for it. If only I could be the one who manages to embarrass her. Later I'll think about how to do it. Anyway, right now I'm lying in my armchair looking out the window as always, waiting for the day to end. Although school matters have some relevance, those that relate to the CIO or the student council, they were the ones that really hooked me, and since there aren't any, I stay out of it as best I can. The only thing I can do is do nothing. Hey, Hyōdō, as you can hear, my peace has been interrupted by none other than my friends, the most famous perverted duo in school. For their frowns and the fact that they have caught my attention by whipping their hands on my desk makes it not difficult for me to imagine what they want. Are you guys offered anything? Anyway, I like imminent danger, so I just sat back in my seat and acted oblivious to make them more angry. Obviously it worked because they even grabbed me by the collar of my shirt. Don't act so relaxed and angry, Motohoma yelled at me, and it almost seemed like he was crying blood. It wasn't enough for you to roll around with the girls in our classroom, but now you're going after the girls from the occult club. I was shocked after hearing that and frowned angrily. What the hell did the 4i just say? Wait, what? I exclaimed, totally confused, making them both release their grip on me. What you heard, you lucky bastard, Mitsuda responded, pointing at me even more furious. I could swear the guy had a vein on his temple about to burst. No, silly, I mean how did they come to that conclusion? I said a little more relaxed. Although I'm having a hard time staying that way. Don't you know the rumors that are circulating about you? By magic, Motohoma almost seemed to forget all of his initial anger and adjusted his glasses to begin his monologue. No, please enlighten me, I answered impatiently. I'm about to beat the information out of him if he doesn't hurry up. Many are saying that you have stolen the attention of the entire female public and have taken advantage of that to have sex like an animal in heat, Motohoma explained, making very suggestive movements. Huh? But that's not all. Mitsuda was the one who spoke, and the next thing he said was enough to make me want to throw my chair out the window. When it was confirmed that you spent your afternoons at the CIO, it is said that it is because your following objectives are its beautiful members, the HHH. And when I thought nothing could bother me anymore, Motohoma reveals a cruel truth to me. Some even believe that you open your trunk for Kiba because you always spend time with him. That left me speechless. Is it so strange that two men get along well without there being something more than friendship involved? Although some girl groups would love for that rumor to be true. This is a bad joke. Even starting over, I can't get rid of gossip like that. Okay, that's it. Without further ado, I stood up as quickly as I could, heading towards the exit, ready to yell at half the school for defamation. I'll go deny all those lies. Originally they were the ones who started this whole wave of rumors. I wonder if they are good at playing innocent or this time it was other students. I lean more towards the latter. I mean, I have discovered that this pair is not the most bright. Wait a minute. Mitsuda grabbed my shoulder before I could leave, and when I saw him I understood why he did it. Just as his anger disappeared as if a bubble burst, it returned along with Motohoma's. Since you joined the occult club, you have lived with pure beauties. And then? Honestly, I was already very exasperated and I just wanted to leave, so I just raised my eyebrow waiting for them to explain. When will you take pity on us and introduce us to one of them? Both begged on the verge of crying. I don't know if it was out of sadness or frustration. I'll do it. I said, less irritated, but I was smiling evilly inside. For the only condition I'll put on them to keep my word. If they stop watching porn for a month. I was waiting for his next move, which would surely be a punch in the face, when two other people joined our conversation. One of them is the person who has gotten on my nerves the most at the academy. What's going on? What is the perverted duo plus Hyōdō-san talking about? One of the girls mocked, placing his hands on her waist and leaning forward. Don't tell me you've already convinced him to be like you. Kiryu. Aika. Said Mitsuda and Motohoma respectively. That's right, Aika. Kiryu, the one responsible for almost all my calamities at school, just made an appearance, followed by an innocent Asia. I just stared at her with half-closed eyes, waiting for her to blurt out her hurtful comment of the day. Asia, there are more boys around here. Kiryu turned to Asia in dismay, and somehow I felt offended. But I think it's not over yet. Why come with this trio of lunatics? And there it is. That's new. Did he just call me a lunatic? I thought, slightly offended. Although hey, it's not that far from my reality. I don't think Ai-san is crazy, Asia said in my defense. She always used to defend me from other people's comments. You are the second person who spends the most time with Hyōdō besides Kiba-san, Kiryu revealed, making Asia's face turn red with embarrassment. I hope no one saw my blush because I also just realized. I don't care. I would be surprised if I discover that they are more connected than they seem. Connected? My two lustful friends shouted in unison. Connected? Asia said, touching her chin in confusion. You are the only crazy one here. I couldn't take it anymore, and I pointed accusingly at Kiryu while she yelled at her. The unfortunate woman just laughs in my face. It's not like we were computers. What's more, go to. Ding dong ding dong dong ding ding dong. Before I could get all my anger out, the bell signaling the end of classes rang. I sighed resignedly, forgetting about all this shit, and I left the room saying goodbye to them. And in the middle of the way I had to avoid Mitsuda and Motohoma, who seemed to want to tackle me. Look for someone else to take it out on, because for now I'm not here in the mood. Rumors are always going to exist, but it's up to you if they affect you or not. That's pretty much the conclusion I came to while walking around school. I was already one step away from the exit when a voice that was too sweet, but at the same time cold as Antarctica, stopped me. Hyōdō-kun, where are you going? I froze and slowly turned to look at the girl responsible for asking me that question. It was Sona, holding a folder full of papers, giving me a look capable of piercing anyone's soul, and to finish grinding it, she was accompanied by two other people. Tsubaki was to his left with a clipboard shaking her head, while Saji was carrying some boxes that covered half of his face, and in his eyes, there was a mixture of pity and amusement. The bastard is having fun with my suffering. I put my brain into overdrive to find an answer before this got worse. A few microseconds later I remembered. As I could forget, since the CIO building is having its annual cleaning, Riaz informed me that it was not necessary for me to go with them, since there was not much work. Furthermore, they would meet in Asia's apartment, since she had offered to be their host. They invited me, but I politely declined because I didn't want to get in the way. Everything was fine there, but since Kaichu is the president of the council and practically knows everything that happens at the school, it was impossible for her not to know about said cleaning, and after finding out that she was free that day, she made me promise that I would help her with her paperwork, which would cover both school and Citri clan matters. Well, it turns out that day is today. I tried to speak with all my might, but I just managed to laugh like a retard. I gathered all the courage I had to even say 2 words. I can explain it. Do it in my office, was all Sona said before resuming her path to the EC room. I lowered my head in surrender and was forced to follow her if I didn't want to get into more trouble. I still wanted to punch myself in the face for my carelessness, but before that I had to justify myself before Kaichu really got angry, because seeing her in that state of mind is the last thing he wants right now. If he already considered this quite a bitter day, I didn't realize it was just beginning. And speaking of Asia, I hope she's not pushing herself too hard. Everything is still very new for her, and having confidence is not something that develops overnight, plus the fact that she is quiet a lot of the time makes me uneasy. I will do what is in my power, and who knows, maybe in the future there will be someone other than me who will also support you. The last thing I want is for you to end up becoming emotionally dependent. A mountain of paperwork later. Note to self. Never forget the promises I make to Sona. Or I will pay dearly. My reasons for thinking about this are very simple. As soon as I arrived at the council headquarters, I apologized to Kaichu ad nauseam, which gave me a false sense of relief, since not even 2 seconds had passed since I had sat at a separate desk when he threw a stack of boring papers at me. That he almost touched the chandelier on the ceiling to fill them. I have a sneaking suspicion that that was his way of getting even with me. It's not that I had any problems doing this task. I'm used to it. What really gave me the creeps was that when I had finished stamping the last document in the stack, I saw that there were 3 more of the same size in front of me. If I was already scared at first, when I looked through them, I discovered that it was next month's paperwork, and to top it all off, there were several boring forms about the assets of the Citri clan, which had to be reviewed by Sona herself so that they were technically correct. Did I want to protest? Yeah. Did you want to ask for help? Also. Did I want to hit Saji for making fun of me in my face? A lot. Did they listen to me? No. Has anyone offered me a hand? Neither. Could I at least rest a little? No joke. Those and many other complaints flooded my disturbed mind. Although not receiving help was more understandable, since, in my humble opinion, not even Tsubaki would dare to disobey a direct order from Kaichu. That's right, she personally took care of it. That he could not receive support from anyone in his entourage. But the worst thing was undoubtedly the fact that the sun was about to set, almost everyone had left and I still hadn't finished, but Sona asked Tsubaki for a cup of tea and proceeded to watch her suffer with piles of bond paper. When I noticed her, she sipped a little of her drink while giving me a mocking smile and a pen in her hand, since the document she had to be signed by her. I bet my entire porn collection that I couldn't bring myself to throw away was bragging about this mess. The reason he does all this is unknown to me. Maybe it was because last week I beat him in a game of Kuruda. At least when I finished, she dropped me off near my house via a teleportation circle so I wouldn't have to walk anymore. And because the streetlights had turned on, a sign that it was getting dark. The only thing I wanted at this moment was to rush to my bed and lie there for as long as possible. But first I had to explain to my parents the reason why I arrived so late. After a long explanation and after receiving a second lecture that day about giving advance notice when I was staying late, I headed to my room with the intention of sleeping, something I couldn't do after almost 3 hours trying to close the doors. Eyes. It didn't matter if I covered myself with my sheets or if I uncovered myself, I couldn't do anything else. As for the sleeping pills I prefer to save them when I really have to use them. I want to try to rest without these. I complained, kicking my mattress. Moments later I calmed down and remained in the same position as before. Face down. This is impossible. I sighed, absolutely defeated for not being able to go to the world of dreams. Although analyzing it again, I don't want another nightmare. I stood up reluctantly, thinking about what I could do to get tired. Exercising was not an option, since I tend to overdo it and end up more tired than I originally wanted. I can't risk practicing magic either. Some of Sona's sensors are still in the area, although fortunately he removed a good amount. I must continue with caution. Or should I go to the kitchen? Okay, I've decided, time for a late night snack. I could go to my pocket dimension and make something else, but it's already midnight and it would be a complete pain. I headed to the kitchen and found 2 sushi rolls that we didn't eat from Thursday's dinner, plus, one is crab and the other is surimi. If only there was soy sauce, this would be an exquisite delicacy. I took some chopsticks along with the sushi and started eating it while I was walking around the house. Again, I had not noticed the details here, such as the paintings that were hanging on the wall, which included several family photos, as well as one or another work of art. It's not like we have the Mona Lisa either, but the landscapes that are painted there are beautiful. I was reflecting on the memories of my childhood that I was slowly remembering. In fact, it's been a long time since I thought about my childhood. I think I sometimes ran around the house naked and drank milk straight from the container. And maybe he even did both at the same time. Who would have imagined that that same child would end up being reincarnated into a demon and subsequently discovered to be the container of a legendary gauntlet that included a dragon sealed inside. What a twist life takes. Every step I took in my life after learning what I could achieve with the help of Drake and my comrades made me feel a sensation similar to adrenaline, hoping that what happened next would be more exciting. But nothing had prepared me for what which would be known as the Second Holy War. I would have continued thinking about that massacre if it hadn't been for a ledge that had crossed my field of vision. In this one there were some small handmade figures, surely coming from the rural area in Japan. To be more precise, where my grandmother apparently lives. There is also a wide variety of books that, due to their covers, are surely photo albums. The me from several years ago would not have even bothered to look at the first page, but since I'm bored, I took the ones in which I appear and lay down on the couch to start flipping through them. How unusual. Someone looking at family photo albums while eating yesterday's sushi in the middle of the night. Every page one turned was full of images of moments that I could remember before. And that was if I was lucky, since I didn't have that luxury of remembering the good times, where I was walking everywhere until I met the old man who introduced me to the wonderful world of breasts with their stories. Ah, what memories. But the next photo was the one that really amazed me. It just can't be. It was the photo of my little self playing with my portable console, in the company of my only childhood friend. Marina. I was still for a few seconds, but as soon as I composed myself, I stood up abruptly from the couch and took the album in my hands, opening the portal to my pocket dimension, caring little if I activated Sona's sensors. In fact, I almost choked on the sushi I had in my mouth from the shock. I was spitting out grains of rice in my path. Ahem, when I arrived, I walked until I was kneeling in front of the trunk, where I kept the few personal items I had from my time, and among all of them, I took a photograph that had several fold marks, and much of its color had deteriorated. It's the same photo as the one in the album, it's just been worn out from years of storage. Her beautiful violet eyes, her mother's energetic nature, her always smiling and enthusiastic way of being. Her unconditional support. The immense faith she felt in the biblical God that characterized her. One that, in my opinion, was much larger than that of many pure-blood angels. He even used to enter his own world. If memory serves, he inherited it from his father. She was also possibly the person who knew me best besides my parents, but above all, she was the first girl who really fell in love with me, and I'm not just saying that because she confessed that to me herself. And later added as she stole a kiss from me once when I had gone to sleep at her house, before she and her family moved away. I compared both photos and a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy invaded my entire being. What I hated most about the entire war was not the blood I shed or how scarred I was at the end, above all that, there were the deaths of all the soldiers. That close to me. As if just having a bond with me condemned them to lose their lives. And although some of them were quick and with almost no pain, I don't even want to imagine those who suffered a worse fate than that. One of those examples was the Shidden family. Then I looked back at the album, and next to where my photo with Irina was, there was another one of us, but apparently we were in the park and I was trying to get her hands off a tree and for some reason her face was very red. Seemed to want to hide whatever was there. I have to assume that one of our parents took it and it was taken at the moment due to the perspective of the photo and because it is out of focus. But that's the least of it. I am completely sure that this never happened on my line. The best theory I can think of is that this is another anomaly, but with the difference that they were events that never happened. But this one, there are at least three, the first being Kuroka's unexpected appearance in Kuo, then the time difference in which I entered the academy, and finally this photograph of a childhood that I don't remember. Anyway, I relaxed and looked at both photos for a few more minutes before getting up, leaving everything as it was and returning to my room. But not before being very curious about whatever was in that tree for Irina to see. He tried so hard that he wouldn't find out. He asked me if. I mumbled to myself as I watched the night outside through my window when I had an idea. A kind of treasure hunt. Only the treasure is a reminiscence. I took a sweatshirt that I had lying around, some longer pants because it was probably cold outside, and some gray sneakers that I bought at a discount. When I was ready, I went out the window and started running along the pavement of the street, having the light of the moon as a guide. Even if I can see in the dark. I arrived at the park in no time and went through the trees one by one, hoping to find something that was not natural about one. I could have used the photo as a reference, but as I said, it was out of focus, and apart from that there were places that no longer existed. I'm willing to find that tree. No matter if it takes me all night. I searched like crazy, but for some reason I ended up lying on the grass, looking at the few stars that were in the sky. In the war, I sometimes looked up when the sky hadn't yet gotten bucked up like everything else. I believed that some of those stars were my loved ones watching me, giving me strength to continue. If I think about it better, none of the stars I'm looking at are any of them, because they are not dead. If I manage to achieve my goal, it will all have been a bad dream. I was going to resume my search when suddenly I felt something cold and wet fall on my forehead, then the same thing happened but on my cheek. I brought my hand closer to me, but I didn't even touch it when more liquid began to fall more frequently and all over my body. What the? I only had a chance to stand up and then a probability hit me like it was a bus. It's raining. I may sound like an idiot, but my reality is that the last time it rained drops of water, and not bursts of explosive spells or flaming asteroids coming out of nowhere, was the day after the fall of Asgard. A tragic event, which I do not intend to talk about. I must leave my sorrows for when I am in private, and as if a switch had been deactivated in me, I didn't care in the least that I was getting wet. In fact, I felt strangely good. Not euphoric, but calm. I also have no idea what motivated me, but I started walking around the park. Then, I started running. Now I was walking through the residential area without having a fixed direction, I was just running without stopping. Just feeling several drops of rain hitting my face, and since it was a simple drizzle, it was relaxing to a certain extent. I even felt like I could escape from everything and everyone. But I would only do that if it helped me in my plans. But everything has a beginning, and it also has an end, being the case of my rainy marathon, because I stopped dead after hearing several gasps coming from the street next to me. I regained all my senses to be ready for whatever happens from now on. Help, please cough cough was a middle-aged man. From his clothing he seems to be affiliated with the church, probably an exorcist, and by holding his abdomen tightly, he indicates that he is wounded. Perhaps fatally. Excuse me, are you? I stopped talking the moment he collapsed to the ground, leaving a puddle of blood that mixed with the rainwater. Since he didn't move several seconds later, I determined that he finally perished. La la la, la la. Shortly after, a dark melody echoed through the area. I only know one madman with such twisted tastes, and as I thought, another exorcist with a much more disheveled appearance appeared jumping until he saw me. Oh, has fate sent me one more sinner to punish? Freed. Damned psychopath, I thought, frowning. I was following his steps since I let him escape after the massacre in the old church, not to kill him, but to keep an eye on him, since he would be important later. I hope may the man who just died forgive me for leaving him alone against this madman. I have a feeling I already know you, stranger Kun, the guy said, waving a sword that I recognized instantly. One of the 7 fragments of Excalibur. Excalibur rapidly. My name doesn't concern you, but you can call me. Then he licked his lips and shouted at me, Purifier Sama. I'll take advantage of the fact that we're in the dark, so I covered my head with the hood of the sweatshirt I brought with me. It'll do. That? The mouse ate your tongue. Ha ha ha, Selzin joked, looking at me with those totally nutty eyes. Instead, I stood still to be ready for whatever this maniac tried. Or was it a dog? It doesn't matter. I wish I had my mask, but I must avoid the few light poles at all costs, and I'll use some spells I read in that CIO book. Even though most of them are defensive. I can take risks with those in my repertoire, but since I am surrounded by houses, I will use the least destructive ones, and only when I am completely sure to hit. I'll see how it goes. At the same time, the abandoned church of Kuo, a place that according to local rumors, is used as a base by people from the underworld, from supposed thieves to murderers. If they only knew that even they are stupid enough to know that entering there is not the best idea, unless you can deal with the gloomy atmosphere it gives off. 2 figures dressed in white capes and blue and gold details entered this same place. One of those silhouettes carried a fairly large object, covered by a kind of sheath made with equally white scraps. The shape of the object looked very similar to a long and heavy sword. It's quite deteriorated, one of the hooded women spoke, examining the surroundings. There are barely any intact windows. I heard that fallen angels had a confrontation in this place, but I didn't know who or against whom. The other woman responded, looking the other way. There are supposed to be more benches. That person is taking a while, the first figure questioned, uncovering her head, revealing a young woman with short blue hair with a green streak and brown eyes. Are you sure we would meet him here? Of course I lived here with my parents, exclaimed the girl, doing the same as her colleague, who was also a young woman with long orange hair tied in 2 pigtails on the sides and violet eyes, along with an expression that radiated joy to everyone. Unlike her companion, who maintained a stoic, almost perpetual frown. Well, when she was little she ended by showing a photo of her with a portable console. Next to another brown-haired boy. If she doesn't appear in 10 minutes, we'll go out to look for him, the brunette said, continuing her walk towards the back room. Hopefully the bathroom hasn't been destroyed. Ooh, I would if you weren't so noisy, the young woman identified as Zenobia responded coldly, returning her gaze to the front of her. Of all the people who could have been her partner, why her? "You're bad, HMPH," the orange-haired girl finished, crossing her arms defeated and offended. Then she saw the photo she was still holding, and a warm smile along with a subtle blush appeared on her face. "Ice kun. I hope I can see you." "Well, I'm here," he thought, keeping the photograph in his cloak. Needless to say, a new shadow is hanging over the town of Kuo. One that both the exorcists and Hyōdō know perfectly well. Chapter 14. Premeditated reunion. The streets of Kuo were desolate, covered in large puddles of water from the rain that was gradually intensifying, going from a light drizzle to a furious storm with lightning included. The perfect environment for an unbridled fight. And also to start an exciting night purge. Or at least that's what the renegade exorcist Fried Selzen thought, who pointed his sword, Excalibur, at the sinful brat that he was going to dismember if he tried to escape. The boy, beside him, remained silent. "Are you going to stay there without doing anything?" shouted the red-eyed lunatic, frantic to satisfy his sick thirst for blood at any cost. "Ah, I get it, you're getting ready for me to purify your soul, right?" The boy took a step back instinctively, caring little that he was already completely soaked and that the temperature had already dropped a lot. "You don't want to try to escape from my idiot." The former member of the church came to the resolution of what he had to do if he wanted to feel satisfied. Tear apart every part of the wretch in front of him. Bathing in his blood. "Here I'm coming, victim kun." Fried rushed towards the chestnut tree first at a speed equal to that of a low-class demon. This will be enough to cut it in two, but he was surprised when the boy was able to move at the last moment, diving and rolling to the left and getting even wetter in the process. "Shit. If I get even a little careless, I'll expose myself," Issei said deep inside him, looking at the religious psychopath's back and trying to plan every step he takes with extreme caution. "That was unexpected," Selzen said, turning to look at the brat, totally furious. The pupils of his eyes shrank, giving him a more sinister touch. "It doesn't matter, you'll die anyway, you're only delaying your death." Turning quickly to make a downward cut towards the boy, he never expected that he himself would put his hands to protect his face, this being in his opinion a very stupid act. Or so he thought at first, because the real surprise came when an emerald defensive magic circle emerged and saved him from the deadly slash. "So you know some tricks, huh?" Fried said sarcastically, before acquiring a more psychotic frown after recognizing the pattern of said spell. "Oh, so you learned your little lights from the dirty shit demons. Now I'll really enjoy it, but when I cut you into pieces, heretic." Fried hit the boy's magical shield again, and this time an abundant amount of cracks formed in his protection spell. Understanding that this was no longer enough, he undid it and took a few steps to get away from his enemy. "Are you leaving already? But I haven't killed you yet," Selzen ran, pointing his sword at the abdomen of his prey. But the same thing happened as a few moments ago. The hooded man covered himself with another magical shield that he made appear at the last moment. What made the boy different was that he broke up his defensive circles for every blocked cut. Since their opponent has a holy sword, demonic magic users would be in big trouble because only the highest ranking spells would be enough to counter the holy aura of the weapon. Well, as long as it's not one of equal capacity to that of the four most powerful sacred swords that exist. Back in the fight, with every second that passed, Fried became more and more desperate. He had not inflicted a single significant wound on the sinful brat of this small town. Right, left, up, down, diagonally, it didn't matter, although he had made several cuts, most of his attacks were deflected or dodged by him. "Stop resisting," the renegade exorcist shouted, increasing the speed of his cuts. An ordinary human couldn't keep up with him. "Unless your movements are too much agile for a cheap bastard like you." The boy's body tensed and he quickly rammed Fried with his elbow, causing him to lose his balance and slip. He forgot what he was thinking a few seconds ago and stood up again, really angry. "You even do more than move like an idiot," Fried shouted with a sadistic smile from ear to ear. He will let the boy fight for a while to give him false hope of success. Before swatting them as if they were a fly. Meanwhile with Issei, he decided to continue the fight by forming another spell, but unlike the previous circles, this one was turquoise. He put one of his hands in front and the water from both the ground and the rain began to go to these, forming an orb made of the crystalline liquid. Then, abruptly, he himself froze. "I'm Setsu frozen blizzard," the boy exclaimed, and from the orb multiple frozen and pointed projectiles shot toward Selzen, who was once again on guard. It cost him practically nothing to destroy the pathetic ice missiles that the little boy launched at him. Being fed up with this shit, the exorcist increased his speed a little more, surpassing that of a lower middle-class demon. If he doesn't kill him with this, he will have no doubt that this boy is not as ordinary as he once believed. Principle. It's a pity that he won't find out soon, as he only watched as the boy moved to the side as he felt himself lose his balance and eventually fall to the ground, skidding until he hit a garbage container. What the hell happened and why do I feel so turned on? Fried asked himself, trying to find the reason why he made a mistake as simple as slipping. Standing up and rubbing his head, he saw how part of the asphalt was frozen. Then he laid his gaze on the second biggest bastard he has met since he arrived in this hovel and noticed that in the hand he did not use there was another turquoise orb that was pointing to the ground, with the only difference that he did not see when he did it. As incredible as it seemed, the neurons that were still functioning correctly managed to think something. Surely he took advantage of the fact that he was focused on destroying the projectiles that he used his free hand to create a frozen path behind him, like an ice rink, and the moment he lunged at him, all he had to do was move 2 steps to his left and the ice would take care of the rest. He has definitely underestimated the whippersnapper in front of him. You're not as idiotic as I thought, Selzen admitted, running a hand through his soaked hair, moving it back out of his way. It would look great. If only it wasn't missing 1 or 2 screws. I admit, coming from you, I don't know how to take that, the boy confessed, feeling strange, making him finally say something in the entire fight. He couldn't help but blurt out a comment, probably to try to forget the burning he felt from the wounds he had. Wow, you finally deigned to speak. Don't scare me like that, okay? I thought I had cut out your tongue by accident, said the insane exorcist in a scolding manner. He even stuck his sword in the floor to put your hands on your hips. You haven't even touched me, clown. Issei's provocation was enough to awaken the anger that the renegade exorcist was still containing. You'll see, you shitty brat, the red-eyed man exclaimed, taking out his weapon and jumping several meters in order to cut his prey diagonally. Fried-sama is going to punish you. Come on, get out. I don't care where, just get away, the brunette thought very quickly as he chose to leave the place. He is running out of time and options. Don't run away, victim Kun. When Selzen's sword was a few meters away from falling on the hooded man, a yellow magical communicator appears in his ear, completely distracting him. Issei, who was looking behind him to calculate Fried's landing place, realized at the last second that the exorcist was distracted and looking away, so he hit the ground hard using his palm, creating a glacier no more. Bigger than a bus that was growing every second. It will serve as a distraction. Which he did not hesitate to take advantage of to hide under a truck that was parked nearby, reducing his aura to its minimum expression as much as he could. Getting wetter than he already was the least of it, the important thing now is to lose this guy. Damn nutty. At that moment Fried returned his sight to the front and could barely react to use his sword, and with a single slash, he shattered the ice into 1,000 pieces. Just barely, and collided with it. As he was listening very attentively to whoever was on the other end of the communicator, he lost sight of his target. Just when he was getting good. You're lucky I have to leave our date, the cheap madman growled into the air. If he went looking for him, he could find him, but he didn't want to make the veggie who would make him more powerful wait. To comply. The only goal he has set since arriving in Kuo. Getting revenge on the scarlet armored guy. I'll tear you apart later, Pray-chan bye. Regardless of the fact that he was alone, he threw a light bomb at the ground, generating a bright flash, which he used to leave the street. Then he can find the brat and kill him and his family, if he has one. 10 minutes passed and Issei finally emerged from his hiding place. He scanned the area for any sign of Selzen, but with the rain still latent, it was difficult to find a clue. That habit of yours of disappearing using light, the brunette complained, rubbing his eyes, exhausted by his terrible performance during the fight. He should train more with low or medium level spells. If he used those from his personal repertoire, which apart from being visually striking, they would destroy a large part of the houses around them. Damn. Don't despair, partner, you still have a chance to hunt down the human drake, reassured his bearer. Even though there are more important matters to attend to, for example. But you must also make sure that our encounter with Blanco happens. I guess I prefer to do the second. Besides healing my wounds, the brunette sighed defeatedly, taking off the hood of his sweatshirt. He saw the dark sky and then the path he took to get here. I'll have to postpone my search. I'll see you soon. Arena. With everything already clarified, the boosted gear user left the scene walking towards his home. He could fly or use a teleportation circle, but he wanted to continue feeling the rain all over his body just for a little while longer. The bad thing is that the corpse of the third exorcist a few steps away from him did not leave him alone, and no matter if he wanted to give him a decent burial, he could not do so without altering something of what he had planned. He just jumped onto the rooftops and left the scene. As for the ice left over on the spot, it will soon begin to break up. The next day. Sona Citri doesn't tend to delve into his own thoughts very often. Most of the time she spends attending to issues that involve both the school and her family. Having to deal with the expectations of family and friends would be overwhelming for a person with a lot of potential, but since she is not normal in many ways, this is easy to handle for a woman of her level. It is useless to meditate on past or unnecessary issues. The only thing that matters is the present and to a lesser extent, the future. You could tell that she didn't spend much time thinking about anything beyond her responsibilities as president of the student council and heir to the Citri clan. But there was something that had lingered in her mind like an annoying nuisance. Splinter for several weeks. That something was the inscrutable Red Emperor dragon. No matter what perspective I saw it from, I couldn't formulate a theory as to why this guy decided to crash her best friend's engagement party, challenge her boyfriend's jerk to a battle for her freedom to choose her husband, and finally leave without saying anything. Nothing. It was just illogical. But more importantly, how did he find out about the party? Could it be that he's been watching the demons? What if it's not just them, but also the other supernatural beings? There isn't even a history of previous appearances for this generation's boosted gear wielder. Perhaps the altercation of the infiltrated fallen angels is the closest to a clue to his origin, and yet he hasn't been able to confirm that he was responsible for the massacre in the old church. From her point of view, it's like he came out of nowhere just to wreak havoc. This and more was going through her mind as she walked towards the academy, reading a grimoire that she had on hand, in addition to being accompanied by her faithful friend and queen, Tsubaki Shinra, being 2 steps behind her. Vice President of the council had noticed that her leader had not changed the page for 10 minutes. Suddenly, the 2 women felt 2 pairs of eyes watching them from the entrance of the school. They continued walking until they reached their destination, where there were 2 silhouettes wearing white cloaks with hoods that covered their heads, in addition to one of the figures carrying on his back a large object covered with bandages. It was shaped like a large sword. This couldn't be worse for her. First he discovers that the second-year student, Hyōdō Issei, has a natural talent with demonic magic. He may manage to master more complex ones, possibly making him a formidable ally or enemy. The latter is highly unlikely, since that he has shown not to have much interest in refining his skills. Now a duo of hooded men have appeared outside their school with man who knows what intentions they have. And the fact that they both radiate a sacred aura meant that whatever brought them here must be a situation of utmost importance. Sacred sword. The high-class demon murmured without taking her eyes off one of the exorcists. It seemed like they were having a staring duel. Aichu then Tsubaki addressed her king after getting out of the initial stupor. They have to do something with the visitors. Yes. Let's go, Sona concluded, resuming the direct path to the church duo. It seems that her problems will only increase from now on. While the demons of the area were in charge of the visitors, Hyōdō Issei was leaning against the wall of the hallway accompanied by his friends, better known as the most famous perverted duo in the entire school. Both looked quite excited and wanted to spread their feeling to his friend-enemy rival, but they were being ignored by the boy. His interests lay elsewhere. Or rather, a few meters away from him. They're here, he thought, looking out the window. He had improved a lot with his sensor skills. That's right. Drake answered him in his head. From his voice, he sounded eager for a fight. Don't worry, partner, it won't be long before we have a confrontation. You better warn the original Red Emperor dragon. It has been a long time since his wielder used his strength to a higher level, and that was boring. HYLDL several screams brought him out of his conversation with the dragon. 2 very irritating voices for him at the moment. Ah yes. The honey-eyed man responded tiredly. There was no need for those 2 to shout at him, they are a few centimeters away from him. So, what do you say? Will you go to Karaoke with us? Mitsuda asked, making a very determined fist. Maybe going out with the brunette will earn them a few points with the girls. Karaoke. Issei replied without understanding much of what his friends were saying. That's right, you know, and I'm character songs and insert songs, explained amazed Motohoma, pretending to have a microphone. After noticing his friend's confused look, he scratched his throat and then adjusted his glasses to look straight into his eyes. Did you not pay attention to us? Well, the boy sputtered, moving slightly backwards, since Mitsuda had copied the other's actions. He was a little intimidated. What is the perverted duo plus Hyōdō doing talking about insert? For the good or bad luck of the Sekiryuutei, Kiryu appeared behind the group of friends smiling from ear to ear. It's obvious that he just came to bother. Kiryu, Mitsuda and Motohoma shouted at the same time, pointing at the girl. She has always given them a hard time. Good morning to you too, Kiryu Issei, on the other hand, was already used to his friend appearing just to annoy him, and more so to him. An unwilling greeting was all that came out of his mouth. Don't tell me, another morning wasted talking about Hex. We were just talking about going to Karaoke, Mitsuda responded, trying to defend himself, being supported by multiple nods from Motohoma. Karaoke. Sounds good to me, I would love to go too, said Aika, smiling in the most shameless way possible, since she practically invited herself. Don't you think, Asia? Yes, exclaimed the blonde, coming out behind the brunette smiling in the same way, but unlike the latter, hers was one of pure emotion. It sounds fun. That. Great, the pair of hormonal teenagers squealed excitedly at the sudden guests. This was going better and better for them. This whole spectacle being watched by an incredulous Issei. He said almost nothing and this talk had reached the same result that he vaguely remembered. More or less. And then, Asia approached the honey-eyed man and asked him a simple question that left him blank, will you go too? The boy hesitated, not knowing exactly what to say. He was planning to reject the proposal, but now the little blonde is asking him directly if she is going. She has him in a bit of a dilemma. He was going to continue training in the dimensional gap as well as dust off some techniques he learned during the days of conflict. But he also wanted to relive the old days of when he was an ordinary teenager, and what better way to do that than to hang out with his friends. And to top it all off, the rest of those present also stopped by to see him, waiting for him to open his mouth. Maybe, just this time. He can be a little selfish. Why yes, it's fine with me in the end, the boy answered somewhat doubtfully, believing that he will end up regretting it. He hopes that doesn't happen. I'm glad, the ex-nun continued, joining her hands excitedly. She had wanted to go out with her best friend again for a long time. Maybe something more. It should be noted that the other two boys were filled with joy. Too much, in the Sekiryuutei's opinion. Later, inside the CIO. Wow, the floor was shiny, said an impressed Asia, seeing the wooden floor that looked new. True, Issei agreed, crouching down to see it more closely. They did put a lot of effort into cleaning the place. I can even see my reflection. The two boys had just entered the abandoned building and were left admiring the tremendous change that the interior of the establishment had undergone. The cleaning made the place look more cared for and impeccable than their own houses. I want to see how the clubhouse turned out, the bishop commented with the intention of continuing upwards. But one of her hands held him on her shoulder. Asia. The person responsible for this was the brunette who looked at her worried. There was something that had been bothering him since yesterday. I understand that you offered to be a hostess yesterday in your apartment for the CIO session. The girl responded nervously, not because of the question itself, but because her friend is closer to her, almost nowhere near invading her personal space. Aren't you demanding too much of yourself? The honey-eyed man questioned a little uncertainly, not wanting to sound like an interloper. I mean, what you did was very brave, but are you sure you're not overwhelming yourself with the devil's work? Well. Those words were enough for the former nun's nerves about the chestnut tree's proximity to become nervous about her actions of the last few days. I wanted to show Butchu-san how grateful I am to her, so I have tried very hard not to disappoint her. Asia. The boy whispered in surprise. And even though I'm very scared, I don't want him to see me as a nuisance, The blonde continued with small tears forming in her eyes. It seemed like she was going to break when she felt a warm hand rest on his head. Hey, listen to me, Issei asked, lightly stroking the blonde hair as he ran his thumb over the girl's left eye, wiping away her tears. In the short time I've known Butchu, I've concluded that she would never despise you, much less I would consider you a nuisance. Why do you believe? Absolutely, Issei continued without removing his hand from her bishop. She has valued you a lot since she met you, she considers you part of her family now. Family? Asia muttered, now seeing the honey eyes of her best friend, as if she had never heard that word. Of course, the Sekiryuutei stated, removing his hand to move some lint that had fallen on the blonde's chest. No matter what happens, not even Butchu, Akeno-san, Kaneko-chan or Kiba will stop loving you. Including me. I-san. Now the girl couldn't help but see in wonder, and with a sparkle in her eyes, the boy who had just eliminated a large part of her fears. This, without a doubt, she will never forget. Meanwhile, she wiped away the tears that threatened to come out. Thank you. Don't thank me, the boy said, downplaying his words. After all, it was the best thing he could think of. Come, let's go with the others. They both continued down the hallway until they came across the steps that led to the second floor, but not before seeing a room that was covered with several chains and even the yellow tape that police officers usually use to prevent anyone from approaching a restricted area. Asia already knew that she should not go there until further notice, so she resumed her walk. On the other hand, Issei knew perfectly well what was behind that door, which is why he remained silent and went after the girl, but that will be a question that he will address later. When it occurs to him how to be affected at will. By eyes capable of stopping time. When they arrived with the other members of the CIO, the first thing they did was approach the bishop of their group and make sure that nothing bad happened to her because she had small tears in her eyes. As soon as she arrived with her servant, she took her to the couch and gave her a big hug. What happened? Are you okay? Asia-chan, the redeed was followed by her queen who stood behind the chair. Did someone hurt you? Tell me who she was. To give her a well-deserved punishment, suffice it to say that she gave the brunette a fleeting glance. Well, she suppressed a strange giggle. Asia-senpai. Kaneko, who was accompanied by Shiro, went on to offer one of her sweets to her senpai while the kitten climbed onto her lap to sleep there. Ice-kun Kiba went on to talk to her best friend to ask if he knew what had happened. Did something bad happen to Asia-san? Well. Not really. The only thing Issei whispered to her was, I think she just took a big weight off her shoulders. Or so I think. The blonde nodded, leaving the topic there, since he already imagined what his friend was referring to. Unbeknownst to him, the honey-eyed boy also had an eye on him. Luckily, he still didn't know that there were exorcists with Excaliburs roaming around Kuo, but he knew that it was a matter of time before he discovered it and possibly found out. Get away from everything. When that happens, it will stop a cute boy from doing something stupid. Eyes. Asia, for her part, is feeling a strange sensation in her chest, a warm and comforting one. Being surrounded by people who appreciate her. She felt more and more part of a family. Something she thought she would never get, so she wiped the tears from her eyes and gave off her best smile. Thank you. Really. And so it went for about half an hour until a knock on the door cut the emotional moment short. Well, what else can be done? Surely there is work to be done. The statement from the Gremory heiress was enough for Akeno to open the door, revealing two women that everyone instantly recognized. Sona Citri and Tsubaki Shinra. The girl with crimson hair was going to greet them like any other day, but the fact that her face was more serious than usual indicated that there was something of utmost importance to talk about, so she assumed a more serious posture. Excuse me, Sona greeted respectfully. Girls, what can I do for you? Riaz asked. There are some matters that we have to talk about, he said, looking at Kiba for a few moments without him realizing it. It is a fact that he will know what is happening, and with the fear that he will do something reckless, I would put it into endanger the fragile balance that exists between the biblical factions, so they must act now. I see, would you like to sit down? Riaz, could you accompany me to my house? The fact that she ignored the RichTales invitation was a sign that this was also urgent. No one will interfere there. That sounds like something delicate, Riaz added, since Sona never asks for something like that unless the situation is critical. Yes, it's something serious, the words of the student council president confirmed her concerns. Okay, let's go. Akeno, since the aforementioned was the only one who was allowed to accompany her king in these situations, because she was the queen of her nobility, they both followed the girls of the council. The rest of the demons of the Gremory clan and Issei had no choice but to retreat to their homes. The walk home was nothing new, I just walked the others to their homes while we talked. Or rather they chatted about whatever Sona had asked to talk to Riaz about in private, while I just listened. Although I have an idea what it is. But still, what a day. One of things that happen in one. First an early morning fight against the crazy Freed, then they invite me to karaoke and I accept, and finally, the topic of Asia. I guess I'll go in order of what I experienced today and take it into account in the future, in case perhaps. Apparently that red-eyed bastard already has at least one Excalibur in his possession. Considering the fact that he is not alone in this, it makes me understand that this conspiracy has been planned for quite some time and is already underway. To handle this event as effectively as possible, I will draw on my fights with both the Fallen and Razor and his entourage. Not everything will happen as I think it will. Who knows how different this event will be from the one I remember, that's why I must be prepared. Later, because of my weakness towards Asia's cuteness, I ended up agreeing to go out with my friends to make others feel sorry for each other in a karaoke room for a few hours. I sounded like a sad person who was bitter about life. Let's better look at it from another perspective, spending time with people I value will help me relax. I'll see if I can get Kiba to come with us and he'll accept. And in the end, I hate to say it but I was right about Asia. It's not that I'm the best at giving words of encouragement, but I want to believe that what I told her was enough for her to clarify her ideas better. I don't expect either solve this problem in a single day, because it is not only I who must contribute so that she can move forward. In the meantime, I must be patient. I'm not angry, I'm not even complaining, I just accepted that I will have to face these kinds of incidents much more often. I just want to get home and think about what I'm going to do about the Excalibur shards. I was amused that Riaz gave me a teleportation circle to my house before she left so that she could get to my house faster. Initially, I asked her how she knew where she lived, since I'm sure I never shared that information. But I was surprised that Sona answered for her by saying that according to what had been reported to her when she was under the side of the fallen angels. Since it seemed reasonable to me, I didn't ask for more. Now, she gave me a circle to get here faster, but I came on foot. The reason? She wanted to walk, nothing more. And because using teleportation circles too often makes me sick to my stomach. As I was searching my pocket for my keys, I realized that the sun was already setting. Apparently I lost track of time at the CIO. I was about to turn to the block where my house was when I felt it. Two very familiar sacred auras were less than 100 meters away from me. In any case, I continued my way until I arrived in front of the entrance to my home. I slowly turned the doorknob and looked out to see the dark hallway. The only light visible was from the living room. Hahaha, you're right, I took this one when she jumped into the pool. I heard two voices chatting very animatedly and I could instantly recognize my mother's. And the other. Time passes very quickly, Oka-san. Thought she hadn't heard it in a long time. Tiptoeing towards the living room, I could feel my heart about to explode with every step I took. I had rehearsed many times what I would say and do when I met them again, but I think all that practice just went out the window. I leaned over to get a better look at what was happening in the room, but just at that precise moment, my mother turns towards me and notices my presence. She takes me away. "Oh Ice, welcome home, I didn't hear you come in." Mom welcomed me with all the calm in the world, while my mind continues processing what the hell I should do next. "Why do you look so surprised? It's been a long time since I last saw you, Ice-kun." One of the guests immediately greeted me cordially, smiling from ear to ear. "Do you remember me?" "It's me. Of course I remember you, orange hair tied in two long pigtails on each side, violet eyes and an unusual little girl's voice. None other than Irina Shidm, exorcist of the church, wielder of one of the 7 swords of Excalibur. And my beautiful friend of childhood." And at her side was another woman with short blue hair, with a strand dyed green, brown eyes and a face as expressionless as I remember. Zenobia Quarta, also an exorcist of the church and bearer of one of the Excalibur, but what makes her special is her natural ability to wield the legendary sacred sword Durandal. As well as her personality. Both were dressed in religious robes that covered her entire body, and neither of them had taken their eyes off me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then I remembered that they asked me a question that I haven't answered, so I composed myself and tried to look normal. Sort of. "Why yes. Long time no see, Irina," I responded, rubbing her arm and looking away. Shit, I still haven't gathered the courage to look at her face for more than 2 seconds. "So you do remember her?" "I'm glad," my mother exclaimed happily, showing me the photo album from my childhood, being more specific about the photo they took of us playing with our portable consoles at Irina's old house. I wish I could remember that occasion better. Like she was so masculine at that time, I thought you wouldn't recognize her, but now it's completely the opposite. She's already quite a woman, don't you think? That last thing Mom said made Irina laugh sadly and look away. How cute she looks doing that. Damn, now is not the time, focus moron. Ahem, I heard how Zenobia cleared her throat in a not very subtle way, earning Irina's attention. "I think she's impatient. Why is it her?" "Well, it seems that very few things have happened since we separated here," Irina said, resuming her neutral attitude and standing up like Zenobia. "Don't tell me they're already leaving. We would like to stay, but we have to go now." "Yes, they are leaving." Okasan still stood up and went with them to the entrance while I stood aside for them to pass. Deep down I wanted them to stay a little longer, and the truth is I can't think of any excuse for that. "First tell me, do you have a place to spend the night?" "It's going to rain again and there aren't many hotels around here," my mother asked them, unlocking the door. "Just a second. Don't worry about that, Okasan, we'll find a place," Irina answered enthusiastically, although from the way Zenobia had her mouth half open, I suppose she beat him to it before she could be the one to answer. "I have an idea, which can be either very good or very bad." They were about to leave when. "You could occupy the guest room," I rushed to speak, drawing the attention of the 3. "I hope Okasan won't be bothered by this. No one has occupied it in a long time, and besides, it's clean." I swallowed hard as I felt a brief air of discomfort after receiving no response. Until Mom finally spoke. "That's a great idea." To my dismay, she was amazed by my proposal. "Wait, she's not angry. And they could also stay for dinner." I turned to look at Irina, and her face changed to a more smiling expression, and it seemed that her eyes were filled with brilliance, but Zenobia was another case because. "We appreciate your hospitality, but we must leave, excuse me." She had already gone ahead to reject the invitation and pushed my childhood friend to the exit in the process, caring little that she put up a little resistance since it was difficult for her to move her. "Muo Zenobia, Ice-kun's mom is the only person who has been nice to us since we arrived. Let's stay, please," she reprimanded, letting go of her partner, pouting, pulling her by her tunic, and her eyes watered. If this were an anime, it would be a pretty comical scene. Zenobia just sighed heavily and shook her head and ignored Irina's tantrum and proceeded to drag her away by the hood of her cloak. They surely would have left if not for a minor inconvenience. As incredible as it may seem, both Zenobia and Irina's stomachs growled at the same time and a little loudly, because Mom and I heard them perfectly. Have they not eaten in days or what happened? "Zenobia-san, Irina-chan, I don't like to be pushy, but it's already too late for 2 ladies to look for a place to stay, and it'll be colder in a few hours. What if they can't find a place? Also, from what we just heard, my son and I haven't eaten very well either, right?" Okasan said, trying to reason with the 2 so that they wouldn't leave. Zenobia stopped and turned to look at my mother, so she took the opportunity to take her hand. "My husband will be home from work soon, and both of us, along with Ice, will take care of you during your stay with us. Please stay." Apparently Irina was the one who was most moved by my mother's words. So much so that she rushed to hug her, repeating over and over again how blessed she would be by God because of her kindness. Rather, it would be because of Michael, but what difference does it make? Zenobia, on the other hand, just blushed and said a timid "it's okay," although I don't know if it was because of what Oka-san said or because she was still embarrassed that her own body betrayed her. If I were in her shoes, I would feel in the same way. After I finished watching the second sentimental scene of the day, my mother locked the door again and asked me to go organize the guest room while she went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, followed by Irina. She was about to go upstairs when a hand grabbed me from her shoulder. It was Zenobia. "Hyōdō, why did you do that?" she asked me with renewed seriousness. "Excuse me?" I said between stutters, looking at her from the front. Her dry tone can be frightening to a certain level. "I'm sorry if I wasn't clear," she apologized, clearing her throat again. "I take back what I said regarding her way of speaking. Why did you offer us asylum? What are your intentions with us?" A part of me felt confused by those questions. To be honest, I don't know why he distrusts me so much. Well, I just wanted to be nice. Nothing more. I think she is not satisfied with my answer because she raised her eyebrow in disbelief at my goodwill. Also, my mom had the last word. She also wanted them to stay and she was going to continue, but I saw Zenobia go to the living room. Did she just leave me talking to myself? Hey. You already convinced me, you don't need to say more, she said to end this little conversation. I forgot that at this time she had little tact with people, so I left it here anyway. On second thought, I must also apologize to Oka-san for inviting people over so suddenly. It doesn't matter if they are old friends, I should be more considerate next time and talk about it with her and dad in advance. Today I was lucky, but I know it won't always be like this. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.